Counselor. We are here with our good friends from the Boston Police Department as part of our fiscal year 20 budget review. I'd like to remind folks, this is a public hearing being broadcast and recorded on Comcast Channel 8, RCN 82, Verizon 1964, and streamed at boston.gov/city-council-TV. I'd like to ask everyone in the chamber to silence their cell phones and electronic devices. We will take public testimony at potentially various stages throughout the hearing. There is a sign-in sheet to my left by the door. I ask that you state your name, affiliation, residence, and please check the box yes if you wish to testify. There are numerous ways to testify. You can attend a public hearing like this, and we will take your testimony publicly. You can come to a hearing dedicated to public testimony on Tuesday, June 4th, anytime from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., and we will stay as long as it is necessary to hear everyone who would like to speak on the budget. You can send testimony to the Committee on Ways and Means, Boston City Council, 5th floor, Boston, Mass. 02201, or email the committee at ccc.wm@boston.gov. We are here again with Boston Police Department's personnel to review dockets 0622 through 0625, orders for the fiscal year 20 operating budget, including annual appropriations for departmental operations, annual appropriation for the school department, appropriation for other post-employment benefits, and appropriation for certain transportation and public realm improvements, as well as 0626 through 0628, capital budget appropriation, including loan orders and lease purchase agreements. I'd like to introduce my colleagues in order of their arrival. To my right, a friend from South Boston, City Councilor at Large Michael Flaherty. To my far left, another friend from South Boston, Councilor Eddie Flynn. To my far left again, Councilor at Large from Dorchester, Anissa Sabi George. To my immediate left, the Council President Campbell from Dorchester, Mattapan. And to my right, friend from Back Bay, Beacon Hill, Jar Sakem. To his right, Councilor Kim Janey from District 7, Councilor Lydia Edwards from East Boston, and Councilor Tim McCarthy from Hyde Park, and Councilor Frank Baker from Dorchester. So with that, let me first just say, I want to thank you, all of your personnel, mostly probably the uniformed officers, men and women, who put on the uniform every day and put themselves in harm's way to protect us all in the city of Boston, but also the civilian personnel who do great work throughout all the districts. So we want to thank you, Commissioner, for being here, and your team.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Ready to go?
It's all yours. Good
afternoon, everyone. And I'd like to thank you, sir, a great chairman, Theomo, Madam President, Councilor Flaherty, Zakem, Janey, Edwards, Sabi George, Flynn, McCarthy, Councilor Baker. And thank you for this opportunity to present the BPD priorities and how they relate to the FY20 budget. At this time, I'd also like to thank Mayor Walsh for his leadership and his guidance. He's allowed me to pick one of the best command staffs in history, in my opinion. And I'd like to thank you as well, sir, for mentioning the civilians on our job, because we don't see a difference. They're part of the family of blue. Mayor Walsh recognizes, acknowledges, and has our back both publicly on the radio, TV, and out in community meetings. Oftentimes, it's a time of anti-police sentiment, but the men and women of the Boston Police Department, both sworn and civilian, work hard, and it's good to be acknowledged by the mayor and by the city council as well. So we thank you for that. So let's get into who I have with me here today. So I'll let everyone introduce themselves. First off, I'm Boston Police Commissioner William G. Gross. And to my left,
Superintendent-in-Chief Greg Long. Deputy Superintendent Michael Stratton. Paul Donovan, Superintendent, Bureau of Investigative Services.
Nora Baston, Superintendent, Bureau of Community Engagement.
John Daly, Superintendent in charge of Bureau of Administration and Technology.
Lisa O'Brien, Chief Financial Officer.
Good afternoon. Bill Ridge, Superintendent, Bureau of Field Services.
All right. Now, with that being said, I have to read a couple of things into record right from the beginning. Right now, we're doing more with less with the Boston Police Department, and later on you'll hear how our numbers reflect that. We have a great relationship with the community, but quite frankly, we need more staffing. With that being said, we're maintaining the sworn staffing level of officers by budgeting for a new class of 120 new recruits. The priority of our administration, we're going to continue to focus on the senseless gun violence. And we definitely need more personnel for the streets with a strong emphasis on our community policing model that we have, that it takes the entire village, but we need more officers to help us out. With that being said, we do need more people. And again, recruiting levels from across the nation are down everywhere. So BPD, here's what we're doing. On every social media platform, we're letting everyone in the city of Boston know that all the neighborhoods that we serve, that we want your representation on the BPD. Whether we're sworn or civilian, we need you at this time. So we're going to recruit. At present, we are using all of our social media platforms such as Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and bpdnews.com. Also, 11 districts with 11 community service offices are putting the message out as well. You're welcome to the BPD. We have to break these negative perceptions and stereotypical views that this department isn't for everyone. It is for everyone. And again, Mayor Walsh has allowed for us to go out and speak in public and commit to making our department more inclusive and more diversified to reflect, again, the neighborhoods that we serve. We will continue to support the efforts to make this Boston Police Department more reflective of the communities, as aforementioned. I'd like to thank you all for helping us bring the cadet program back. As you know, I'm a former police cadet, and getting to know the culture, getting to have cadets that are actually from the city, thank you, Councilor Flaherty, has been instrumental in them learning the culture and then going on to the police academy and then hitting the streets later where they can pass on their knowledge and experience as being members of the city. But we are definitely budgeting to put on a third class this year. And moving forward with the implementation of the body-worn cameras to further transparency with the community. Body-worn cameras, we've completed stages of training, and hopefully by early to mid-June, we can implement them into our service. And quite frankly, we're a department that believes in we must do everything we can to build trust with the community. Across the nation, when it's come to body-worn cameras, unfortunately, they're put in place by the government as a result of a consent decree. Here in Boston, that is not the case. We have listened to the people, we've listened to the mayor, and we conducted a pilot program, and the people have spoken. So we're looking forward to implementing the body-worn camera program, and as soon as we're through with union negotiations, we can move forward. I believe in technology, so let's go. It's more trust on both sides and better for police and for our community. In 2018, Part 1 crimes were down 3%. In 2018 as well, we've had the lowest overall Part 1 crime in Boston since at least 2006. Again, keeping in mind we're doing more with less, but also keep in mind that any numbers that we tout to the positive is definitely as a result of our relationship with the community, their input, their willingness to help us out, and the willingness to work on problems together so that we'll have a better quality of life for all. The shootings are down by 22%. The number of shooting victims down 22%. Again, hard work with the community, and definitely the programs and initiatives that we have in place for the youth in the community and the community in its entirety definitely help. The arrest rates were down by 11%. We believe that cuffs should be the last resort. And keep in mind, if you can't be rehabilitated on this side, you do need to be locked up. That's fair and that's just. And hopefully we'll have programs and initiatives in place that will make folks see the error of their ways and be more productive when they return to our neighborhoods. In 2018, 749 guns were taken off the street, including 43 from the mayor's one-day gun buyback. 459 firearm-related arrests were made. As well, we love to educate people about the BPD and how it is a part of a village. With that being said, I'd like to speak to the partnerships that we have between the police and the nonprofit, the clergy, even our professional sports teams, the institutions of higher learning that allow us to see problems of the neighborhood and solutions through a different lens than our own. Also, our great medical facilities educate us as well. And it's definitely building a relationship of trust in the community when folks know of our entire partnership and that we're not just interested in cuffs, we're interested in healing families, giving families opportunities, and educating them about what's available to them to ensure that their children are not susceptible to gangs, human trafficking, just caught up in the street life. So our partnerships are working very well, but there's always room for improvement. Until we have everyone on board 100%, then we still have work to do. We definitely had an expansion of the youth development programs, which funded 20 nonprofits across the city to work with the youth. This went from an allocation of $250,000 in FY18 to $500,000 in FY19. So I believe each were funded $25,000 and 20 each. Again, sending a message. We all have to work together, and it starts with our future and investing in the youth in our community and providing them opportunities. As well, the relationship in the communities as a whole, we hear a lot of feedback, and there's definitely problems out there, definitely to deal with mental health issues. One of the programs and partnerships that have been most beneficial to us is the partnership with the Boston Medical Center's BEST program, which provides mental health clinicians to co-respond with officers to calls involving emotionally disturbed persons. Counselor Salvi George, you've been instrumental in bringing education and awareness to what the BEST teams look like and the importance of having more BEST teams for the BPD. So we'd like to thank you for that. And again, working with Boston Medical Center, not only on our BEST teams, but also in an education of the opioid crisis, mental health, and a litany of other things. We're not in it alone, and we definitely appreciate their partnership. What we've done new to address the opioid epidemic, homeless, mental health issues, and human trafficking is we've hired Deputy Superintendent Stratton. And he's definitely approached this in a different way, that we actually have officers out there working with him. You can see him out almost every morning at Melnia, Cass, and Mass Ave, dealing with the population there that are there for various reasons. But the thing is, he's taking part in a coordinated effort between BMC, Suffolk County Sheriff Steve Tompkins and his crew, the state police, Boston Public Health Commission, BPD, and trained clinicians. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the judicial system as well, with several first justices working along with Dr. Jenna Savage over there. Cuffs are not the answer. We have to find a way to reach the true problems that bring on those dependencies. Who we will lock up are the dealers that are dealing poison. Who we will lock up are those that are taking advantage and creating victims of, again, opioid dependencies and or human trafficking. So a multifaceted approach. Also, we're speaking of youth. We just love our continued relationship with Youth Connect, where we have licensed clinical social workers in our stations and specialized units. Those stations being Roxbury, Mattapan, Dorchester, Jamaica Plain, East Boston, as well as the South End. The specialized units are the gang unit, the school police unit, and the Family Justice Center. So again, licensed clinical social workers working in partnership with the families to educate them about what's available to that family. They're not alone, and that we're going to work real hard to make sure that their children don't fall prey to joining gangs, senseless acts of violence, or fall prey to the predators that will have them committing acts of crime or victimizing them by being a part of the human trafficking trade. We will also continue to empower the youth through our programs and initiatives. Make our future leaders. So we have several programs that are intended to provide mentoring, life skills, academic tutoring, leadership skills, and workforce development. And what's key amongst those are youth police dialogues. We often speak for the youth, at the youth, but what we do is, excuse me, let me backtrack. Society often speaks for the youth and at the youth, but what we do here at BPD and in the city of Boston, we want to hear the voices of the youth and how they can help us bring them along and how they can help us solve any problems with the youth in our Commonwealth. And trust me, folks, what we're doing with the community that's been successful in the past will continue to do so. So we have sports leagues, arts program, community service projects, block parties, junior police academy, teen police academy, citizens police academy. And we will continue with our neighborhood walks, and thank you to all that have attended our peace walks as well. Those will continue. It's a great relationship builder, just being out and about. And you will see the entire Boston Police Command staff out in the communities. No matter what bureaus that they head, they will be out at roll calls, community meetings, and community events. Leadership begins from the top on down, and I'm proud to say, again, Mayor Walsh has afforded me the opportunity to pick a command staff that will be fully engaged. And speaking of communities, in 2018, Mayor Walsh allowed us to create the Bureau of Community Engagement. Quite frankly, what this is, it's just us expanding the success of our community policing model. He allowed us to thank you, that's what I needed. He allowed us to build the Bureau of Community Engagement, and I'm sure you are all aware of Superintendent Nora Bastian being promoted as the head of that bureau. And quite frankly, 11 districts, 11 community service offices will now be on the same page to ensure that we're all committed to serving the youth, serving the seniors, and committed to our community meetings, and committed to working in partnership together to create a better quality of life for all. Superintendent Bastian's experience and her knowledge, she is building a great team. We now have the school police unit under her. Civil Rights Unit Liaison, the Police Athletic Activities League. So you'll hear more from her later about this bureau, but why rest on your laurels? Let's expand and let's increase the success that we're already having. The other milestones for 2018, due to our great sports teams, we've had several parades. But if you've seen how we've handled that, when I say we, all of us, it's been very successful as we've taken care of our large-scale events, such as the parades, protests. We're all on the same page with our state, local, and federal law enforcement agencies. We have a great teamwork in place so that if there are large-scale protests or events that we're working together collaboratively, like we should be, to address anything that comes our way and make sure that all of those venues are protected. The advancement of our command staff as well also includes a communication, a component where we've educated the command staff by sending them all to Boston University's Questrom School of Business. Also, most of the command staff have been trained in domestic preparedness through FEMA. Our former Superintendent-in-Chief, Robert Dunford, is now in charge of that project, and trust me, we got no breaks. So you have a command staff that we continue to increase their education, their community involvement, and again, we see what's happening around the world, so you have to have a command staff in place where each and every one can respond, be incident commanders to respond to anything, foreign and domestic terrorism, and handle the situations at hand. So moving forward, the goals of this year is to further prevent and reduce crime and violence, engage even more with the community through our Bureau of Community Engagement, make connections to the services. Anyone that serves the city of Boston, we should be working collaboratively with through the mayor's cabinets, any programs, any initiatives. We believe that we should be there working with them. And timely and efficient response to crimes and calls for service. That's why, folks, if you see us out there and we're committed to sound bites, we thank the people that call 911 to get us there in a timely fashion that can help us facilitate the investigations. We thank the folks that call us. Don't think you're bothering us by increased 911 calls. Just call us so we can better serve you. A few examples of how we'll reach these goals are that the BPD and partners will continue to target individuals driving gun violence in hotspot neighborhoods for aggressive enforcement and intervention, and when possible, offer intervention and prevention services to the family members. You've heard us say that publicly before, too. There's a great misconception that there's a great number of individuals committing these crimes, when in actuality, it's 1 or 2% that are actually committing violent crimes out there, and we believe if we target them, it'll reduce crime. But if we target them a different way as well, by convincing them that a life of crime is not the way, we'll do that as well. We'll attack those problems from all fronts. Again, not to be redundant, the Bureau of Community Engagement will continue to create innovative programs, form new partnerships, and promote best practices for outreach and engagement across the city in order to build trust and strengthen relationships. We will definitely continue the Youth Development Grants Program, youth development programs, hire 120 new police officers, as alluded to earlier, again, a new class of cadets, complete a superior officer's promotional exam process, and go live with our Mark 43 records management system, long overdue and much needed. And we also have to commit to a radio systems upgrade. Again, you have to be able to call us, you have to be able to communicate, so that's important. So in closing, with your continued support, which, by the way, is much appreciated, I travel across the country, and the relationship that police departments and their city councilors have aren't often as successful as we have here. So I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your continued support, holding us accountable. I mean, if your constituency has questions, you definitely question us, and we answer them. But it's about accountability and showing people that we can work together in partnership with not only you, but Mayor Walsh. So we do greatly appreciate your support, and you're definitely helping us to prepare any challenges that we may face in the future. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and I think we are the envy of many municipalities with the relationship that this council enjoys with Boston Police Department, but especially, and probably more importantly, the community. And I think we serve as a model. I know that when you were chief prior to being named commissioner, President Obama called you guys down all the time to see what we're doing in Boston to help other municipalities do it better. And that shouldn't be lost amongst any of us here, so I want to thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Just wanted to dive into some budget stuff. And obviously, I think, you know I support, and we've mentioned many different times, the need for more uniforms to reflect that, if nothing else, the demand and the increase in population that we've seen over the past, several years especially. And I saw in the budget, there's about 324 personnel, and I'm assuming that's both civilian and sworn uniformed officers. What's the breakdown between sworn officers and civilians?
So I think we have about 2,100 at this time for sworn. I want to get you the exact numbers from my subject matter expert.
Okay.
And
So, total sworn is 2186, and civilians, 760. And, the changes is spread across. I mean, we hired another 120, 115 now in the academy for this next recruit class, another 120 in the next coming year on the sworn side. And on the civilian side, we look as needed to increase our head count around certain requirements.
Right. And is it correct of me to say that the first cadet class is now hitting the streets as sworn officers? Is that right?
No, they're currently in the current recruit class.
Okay.
There are 21 cadets in the cadet class that will graduate in June, and 22 entered and 21 still remain in that class. So they're
Right.
scheduled to graduate. No, they're from the 2016 class, and 2 came in from the 2018 class because they weren't cadet preference, but they made the civil service requirement.
Great. And so I think there's 20 additional positions funded through this budget that I saw. A little drop in external funding personnel, but obviously you're making it up. So I guess to try to address the question, I think we have a willingness to support more hiring, but I know that in years past, it's been recruiting that has been somewhat of an issue. Is that still the case, or?
so, somewhat, yes, and that's across the nation, but we've hired Michael Gaskins. He's a recruiting officer, as well as he helps us with the exam process as well. As I alluded to in our opening remarks, we're definitely committed to outreach to the communities that we serve. So despite our community meetings, we feel as though we still need to push our message and our invitation through, again, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and bpdnews.com. And I know I've spoken to several counselors as well, and they know that to their constituency, I appreciate that they pass their message as well, that we have a cadet program and that we're looking for officers of all genders, nationalities, ethnicities. Whoever we serve, that's who we want on the Boston Police Department.
Right. And a more broad question, there's a 3.4-ish% increase in your overall budget, but you've kind of reallocated, for example, the operations is down from 21 million down to 14, but then you've increased the Bureau of Professional Development and especially Administration and Technology. Can you speak to those reallocations a little?
Yes.
Sure. I think there are some portions of those changes related to reorganization, moving the operations division from one bureau to another, and some of it is headcount issues.
Some of the headcount, the Bureau of Administration and Technology also includes operations. Some of the personnel got shifted under the BAT, Administration and Technology, but as a whole, it's still the Bureau of Administration and Technology. It's just a personnel flip between BAT2 and BAT3, but overall, that's the whole. But also, the operations, the 911 division moved into BAT this year and was moved out of BFS, so you'll see a slight decrease in the BFS personnel, and that's also the bump that you're going to see under the Bureau of Administration and Technology.
Right.
And with respect to professional development, those includes the recruit class, but also Roland still in the Bureau of Professional Development, those officers are still considered probationary, and once they have become permanent, they'll move to the respective districts. So you'll see a slight increase, probably go up in BFS as well to offset the decrease that you're currently seeing in that org.
Right, okay. And as I said, I'm looking at 3,034 paid positions, right, both part-time and full-time. And I guess the question is, how many more officers and such do you think we need to be at full capacity?
In my opinion, in days of yore, we've had almost 2,500 officers. We're down to 2,100.
Wow.
And as you look across our city skyline, all you see is cranes. We have businesses coming in, and definitely more and more residents being built. So we definitely need 200 to 300 more officers.
Wow, okay. Well, thank you. I've failed to mention that we've been joined by Councilor Matt O'Malley shortly after you started your presentation, and let me now recognize Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commish, Chief Soups, and Director. Good to see everybody, and we enjoy the great relationship, not only personally, but with this council, and we appreciate the work that you're all doing every day to make our city the best and safest city in the country. The question really on the 2186 for me will be how many of those individuals will be turning 65 this year, next year, and the year after. So if we look at a 3-year window, how many of them are we losing? Second part of the question is, and we're going to have a hearing on this at your discretion, Commissioners, will the department consider moving the mandatory retirement age beyond 65? I think in 2019 with
Yes, we lost some
folks running
that,
marathons and the health, and I don't have a number in mind, it could be 66, could be 67, 69, but I think we lose a lot of good, bright, talented, committed officers. Some want to go at 65, and that's their right, they've served the city, but others wish to stick around, and I think we have an opportunity to capture that talent and that commitment to our city by moving the age beyond 65. So of the 2186, how many we're going to lose over the next 3 years? That's a big question for me as to whether or not it makes sense to move beyond 65 and also continue to add classes.
So we average about 47 retirements per year, both mandatory and voluntary. This year, we're looking at about 53. We've had 34 retirements to date. Of those, 5 have been mandatory retirements. We have 14 more before the end of the year. Looking at projections, we expect to see those numbers stay close to the same, but it's very hard to predict based on a number of factors. So we watch it closely, we track it very closely. We look at not only people who are in mandatory retirements, but people who are within a window and sort of have a favorable position for retirement and try to get a sense of that. it's a continuing, we expect it to continue with a slight uptick, and I think there's a demographic bulge we're looking at in 3 to 5 years.
Right, and that's the perfect storm, I think, for us, where we have populations increasing. We have 3 or 4, where they were supersized classes back in, I don't know if whether it was the Bush or the Clinton days.
Actually, it was 35 years ago. It's our anniversary today.
There it is.
Large classes.
Think about that.
And most of my classmates are gone.
See that?
They're retiring, so, as well.
Right. So we want an optimum number of 2,500, but we're just sort of struggling to kind of sort of stay afloat, if you will, and.
Give me 23, we'll be fine.
23. Okay. That'd be nice. Shifting just a little bit to, and it's still kind of, for me, it defies logic, where we'll have a, and again, I think you should go to the academy, you come out of the academy, you become a patrolman, and at some point, you need to make a decision. Do you want to go the sergeant, lieutenant, captain route, or do you want to go the detective route and then become a sergeant, detective, lieutenant detective, captain detective? We have sergeant detectives supervising detectives, and they've never been a detective. Same with lieutenants and captains. I just think that is sort of upside down from a structural standpoint. Could we have a system where you become a patrol officer, you do your time, and then at some point you make a career decision? You know, you either want to continue to be a patrolman or you want to be a detective, and then you go the sort of the sergeant detective route, the lieutenant detective route, the captain detective route, as opposed to having situations where we have patrolmen becoming sergeants and then, I guess, crossing over to get a rating, and then they're supervising individuals that they've never actually done that job. I just think for some reason, from a management perspective, from a cost-benefit analysis perspective, from a leadership position, I just think that's and I don't know how you fix it, but I kind of have an issue.
We're definitely taking a new look at what I love about this administration here. You have all street cops that have worked their way up. They know the importance as well as mentorship. So we keep our eye on future talent.
Gotcha.
We actually get out there and talk to officers and see, what do you want to do next? They may be afforded the opportunity to go to specialized units where they're learning a litany of things, and kind of like cross-training, where you're working hand in hand with detectives, working with supervisors. So if you're a patrolman, you're learning what detectives do.
Right.
You're taking part in affidavits in support of search warrants, investigations, as well. If you're a detective or patrolman going to the next level, the leaders in those fields, especially our frontline supervisors, work hand in hand, and they often mentor as well. So that's definitely a solution that we found that's worked best, that some of our best sergeants and detectives have benefited from mentors.
Great.
From all levels.
That's very refreshing here. In the previous administration, there were more political appointments and who held whose sign. Next thing you know, they get a rating and they're supervising someone that they've never done the job. And you know what happens then? Geez, just take care of it. Oh, you know what to do. Just take care of it because they've never done it.
Well, you know,
I think there's a huge inefficiency.
I'm a good old street cop.
I know
and, trust me, Mayor Walsh has allowed me the opportunity to promote without interference.
Which is great.
And so in the last almost 8 months, we've had almost 100 promotions, and they've been workers.
Thank you. And this is the last question on, for me, as a citywide council, the biggest criticism that you hear about our police department is they don't feel that we do enough traffic violations. One of the big issues we hit regularly in community meetings is speeding cars, not stopping for pedestrians, not stopping at the stop signs, going through red lights. And I know it's sort of like not sort of sexy police work, but my position would be if we could sort of maybe bolster our traffic division or identify the men and women on the job that actually like to do that. That's a kind of a commitment and a passion of theirs and play to our strengths. Because I know that we had one in our neighborhood several years ago, an officer. He was phenomenal at doing just that, and that was sort of what his strength was. But I know that that's sort of the knock across the city is that they know we're doing a great job. They appreciate the job you and your team are doing. But if there is one criticism, they don't feel that we're stopping enough vehicles. And I know that, again, oftentimes a motor vehicle stop can mushroom and can go from bad to worse real fast, whether that's part of it or whether it's just, it's kind of not what I want to do.
We're prepared.
But it's between the stop signs, the red lights, the crosswalks. My office is inundated with calls across the city that we don't seem to be doing enough, and we need a partner. We know that we have a traffic division. Yes. What resources can this council give you and your team to really kind of bolster that? And I think you would see a huge difference across our city with respect to pedestrian cycle safety, as well as just traffic calming in general. We have, my colleagues here have put forth efforts to lower the speed limit, et cetera. But if we're not going to even enforce the lowered speed limit, what's the sense of moving the speed limit? But I'd like to get your thoughts on the traffic division.
Well, Council, as far as the traffic unit, I know that that's come up and there's been some, some public meetings about that. Again, like everything else, they'd probably take, significant amount of resources, like other bodies within the department to create that, which, we're kind of short in a lot of different units and districts, currently. So as far as bringing bodies to bear to bring to that unit, I think it would be a little bit tough. As far as the enforcement, I think, each district has, those Tango cars, they have them on first half in the days. Their specific assignment is to do traffic enforcement. We also have, the other cars, you have the Rapids and the service cars conducting traffic stops also. In addition, obviously we have the mobile operations. We bring them into different areas where there are specific complaints in different neighborhoods across the city. But like I said, I just think as far as the traffic unit's concerned, again, it's a resource thing. I think it's something that, obviously, the commissioner we've talked about, a couple of us have talked about it. I think, in theory, it's, I think you could make an impact with it. Again, I think it just has to have, has to do with resources and where we'd pull the bodies from to create that.
Yes, we need more officers, and in all fairness, we've even talked about training cadets as well. Not in the major intersections, but they can help pull traffic. And I think we need to work with the transportation department as well. We have a new casino in Everett. Billions of new revenue in this city that are attracting not only businessmen, but this is a destination city. So we've had an influx of several thousand Uber drivers as well. And again, Counselor, until I get more police officers to address the increasing population of Boston, we're kind of in a tough position, because we do have to answer our calls for service. But as the chief just alluded to, we do have our Tango cars, Tango, an acronym for traffic cars in each division, and they're supplemented by mobile operations to the motorcycle officers until we can get an increase in personnel.
Good, thank you, Chief, and thanks, Commissioner. The footnote on that is we had that incident last year on L Street, and your guys were out there doing a phenomenal job in partnership with some of our other partners in public safety, and just the sheer number of violations that they wrote in a 1 month period speaks to sort of a bigger issue across the city.
Those
so
were
I appreciate
big
your
numbers.
time and attention to that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Counselor Flynn.
Thank you, Council Siomo, and thank you to the Commissioner and the command staff for being here and for your leadership in this city for many years. I know, Commissioner, you talked about community engagement.
Yes.
Over the last week, I had the opportunity to be with Captain Boyle at a prayer breakfast, and Captain Fong at an event at the YMCA, and Captain Sweeney at a park in the South End. And I also see the officers as well walking the beat and talking to residents, engaging business owners. How important is it for you and the department to have a program that does great work on community engagement? Does that have a direct link to, lower crime or certainly better relationships, but does it also have an impact on lower crime rate as well?
I think it absolutely does, Counselor. Here's why. Again, sometimes perception's reality, and there's stereotypical views and perceptions that are prevalent about Boston's rich past as a city, and definitely as the police department. The only way to break those negative perceptions and stereotypical views is to get out and educate people about who you are and what you're doing. Of course, never forgetting the past, using those as teachable learning moments, and then showing people who we are. And the only way to do that is to get out and know the people in the community. So from the top on down, we are out in the communities. We are talking to people, especially the youth, and we are educating people about the programs that are available to them, not only through Boston Police Department, through your programs and initiatives as city councilors and the mayors as well. This time I'd like to invite Superintendent Bastion to explain a little bit more about what she does as the head of the Bureau of Community Engagement.
Thank you, Commissioner. But to your point, this also doesn't happen overnight. I've been on this doing, walking the beat and getting to know people since 2005. So this is a result of all the work we've been doing for all the years. Trust doesn't come easily. We can't get into the homes and get to know the families until we really are out there on a consistent basis. Consistency is the key. And that's why this bureau that I am leading is to make sure that happens across the city. Innovative programs, like you said, making sure all the districts are given the services that is needed, and also, like you said, to everyone, all the ages and everyone that's around, but you need to be consistent. You need to have the programs so they're working with everybody, boys and girls, and emphasis in neighborhoods that usually don't have trust and don't believe in relationships and the stereotypes, so you have to be out there even more. So purposely, we have the flashlight walks, as you know, and a lot of you guys come to, and the coffees that you also have come to. And that's what we try to do. We try to create innovative programs. We're working a lot at the Condon School lately, because we knew that's an area where we're weak. And we're trying to build relationships in areas that we know we don't have strong partnerships. So that's right now the goal of the Bureau, and to ensure that all the CSO officers across all the districts are doing that. And it's going very well. Up to date, we've been here since September, but we're changing lives. We're building trust, and we're building and taking away those stereotypes that are usually negative and making them positive. And most of all, we're telling our own narrative. So it's been working. It's been very successful.
And one more thing to add real quick that I really appreciate about the Bureau of Community Engagement under the leadership of Superintendent Bastian is that oftentimes it seems as though the young ladies in our communities are forgotten. The focus is on the male population. She has a group of volunteer officers, Women in Blue, that address the female population of our city. Strong body, mind, soul, decision-making processes, and also to ensure them that they have folks that they can depend on. And so that's very strong in outreach to the young females and teens and young women in our city, that they're being empowered as well. It's long overdue.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you to the command staff. And I know we have a great program throughout the city, but especially at C6. I see a lot of the offices playing tennis, engaging young people in tennis, but I especially like seeing it. They do a lot of outreach to public housing residents as well.
Yes.
So that's especially important. I know Councilor Flaherty highlighted pedestrian safety. That's an issue I've been focused on for the last year and a half. That's probably my top issue. Vision Zero. I know after that terrible accident we had, I think, thousands of violations after that. But what can we expect throughout the city in terms of being aggressive on motor vehicle violations, especially speeding, people going through crosswalks, driving through crosswalks? I see a lot of elderly people walking, and they'll be in the crosswalk, and a driver will go by them 40 miles an hour. I'll see mothers with kids. I'll see disabled people in crosswalks, and there's no respect for them, that they'll just continue driving. So that's a big concern of mine.
I can guarantee you we will see increased coverage and citations. Superintendent Rich.
Counselor, in regards to some of the issues we have across the city in regards to moving violations in particular, not just traffic, but moving violations. I know the chief alluded to a Tango 55 car that we call that's put out. Each district also has an auto investigator, and we made a conscious decision approximately 2 years ago to not only train the auto investigators in accident reconstruction. They've all gone to courses, and some of those courses are pretty intensive. They also work with the district captains to basically designate those particular areas for selective enforcement where we were having either motor vehicle accidents or we're getting citizen complaints. Again, we work with our mobile operations areas, so the Captain Davin, in charge of special ops, will get requests in from district captains about specific areas where they would like to see some additional coverage to assist with them. So it's kind of we try to take a look at where the accidents are actually happening, And again, sometimes the commissioner alluded to its perception, but, you know, when we have the stats to show that these are happening at those particular intersections, you know, we target those for selective enforcement. And we do that with our Tango 55 cars and with our special ops motorcycle units that go out there. So we're kind of constantly looking at that, and then we try to address it. I know, you know, certain neighborhoods of the city, in particular, you know, some of the South Boston area where we had that horrific accident. You know, we did target that. We targeted it for an extensive period of time. You know, the whole goal of selective enforcement is to bring voluntary compliance.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can't even get the message across about it. You know, I've had you know, anecdotal stories. You know, the cop is going to be in that corner, and still people go through the stop sign, and they know the cop's going to be at the corner.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just shake my head. I said, you know, we're out there. We've been out there for the last week, and we're going to continue to be out there. So it's the constant shifting of resources, but pretty much we do that through the information that we're getting from our auto investigators, working with the district captains, you know, where we're going to, you know, commit our resources to. Because, you know, it's a finite number of officers we have to be able to do this.
And, you know, we'll be graduating 115 soon. And they'll know all the challenges that we are facing out there as pertains to traffic. We just want to let everyone know, a part of our academy training, the very foundation is fair and impartial policing, bolstered by procedural justice. So when we commit to the traffic stops that we're going to commit to, know that we will have that in mind. It's not going to be based on race. It's going to be based on the infraction. So wherever we increase our patrols or traffic enforcement, it's going to be because of the violations, no matter where in the city.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just also want to thank Deputy Superintendent Stratton for being a presence in the South Boston, Dorchester area as well, especially Andrew Square, working with us on some public safety and substance abuse issues. So on behalf of the neighborhood, we wanted to say thank you to you as well.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilor Asabi George.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for being here. And thank you, Commissioner, for the little bit of a shout out. I'm very proud of the work that I've been able to do in partnership, certainly with you, to increase the number of best clinicians that are a regular part of the work that happens every day in Boston. Can you talk a little bit about the need to possibly expand that? Because I think the best clinicians piece has been very successful. The relationships have worked well between the clinicians, the officers, as well as the community. And I'd like to advocate for additional resources and to understand the appropriate number to work within the districts, but also within perhaps the school police unit.
Well, again, thank you for your leadership in that field. Anything we can do to enhance our relationship with the communities of Boston is greatly needed. And quite frankly, you know, there are several families who have members that are suffering from, you know, mental health issues. We are not mental health experts. So when we have best clinicians with us that are experts in that subject matter, that are able to help us facilitate a peaceful and safe transition from whatever home or if someone's out in public to a facility where they can, a medical facility where they can be treated, is definitely beneficial. We've seen tragedies across the nation. We suffered some tragedies here in Boston as well. So again, law enforcement needs help. And best clinicians, we need to have them in every district. Again, they'll help us facilitate these interactions to be more safe, more positive, more healthy for everyone involved.
Great. So in every district, there are 11 districts.
Yes.
And I imagine that we may want coverage over multiple shifts and perhaps an additional support person for a clinician for the school police unit. Because oftentimes if the police unit's called to a school, it's because a child needs support.
Yes.
So I want to make sure that we can do that, and I'd like to advocate for that. So is that number perhaps 23 additional clinicians to support if we're thinking about 2 in
Yes,
every
it is.
district and then 1 for the school unit?
Because even clinicians deserve days off and vacation, so we need to have enough in place to make sure we have full coverage.
Great, thank you.
And that would definitely enhance how we serve the people of Boston.
Great. So thank you for that. So I'm going to continue to advocate potentially for 23 more
Thank you.
clinicians to be partnered with you and to help support this work and the residents across the city of Boston. My other question, and this came up in the capital budget presentation here before the council a few weeks ago, and with the new crime bill that was passed last year at the State House and the changes that are happening within your department, I think that we should be advocating for some resources, a capital investment into a new crime lab, whether it's within your building now or in a standalone or another spot across the city. Can you talk a little bit about the needs?
First of all, I think I'm going to swear you in on the command staff because you're on point. As we know, the new crime bill has set into place new standards that we have to complete certain aspects of an investigation within 30 days, especially the sexual assault crime kits. But quite frankly, we need more room, not only for our crime labs, our forensics group, but we need more personnel as well. Definitely to meet those standards with the personnel that we have right now. So we are working with Mayor Walsh in reviewing the staffing issues, and we've had some great talks about that. And so everyone knows the staffing issues. Everyone knows about the new crime bill, and we've had great talks with the mayor and his staff about increasing the staffing levels. So those talks will continue, and I'll keep you updated on the progress.
And I'd say an investment certainly into the facilities is needed to make sure that you can
Absolutely.
do the work, but the staffing issues is a significant concern, obviously, as well, because we want people to, your staff, to be able to do the work that they need to do in a timely manner to meet the state requirement, but also to respond to unsolved cases and to
Yes.
make some gains in the work that often gets left behind. And I worry with the new crime bill that passed, I supported that crime bill, but one of my worries is with some of the real stringent or the restrictions or the new requirements, that as we focus on responding to processing a rape kit, for example, that other things will get put aside. We should be able to do all of those things, but you need the capacity to do
Yes,
that.
from rape kits to testing of ballistics on guns and DNA swabs on firearms. Quite frankly, everyone knows this population's increasing. Along with an increased population, you also have members of society that commit to criminal activities and are of criminal enterprise. Along with that, to successfully bring them to prosecution, we need to commit to testing, and we need the personnel to do that. So we definitely need more space, more labs, more personnel. But again, the mayor's committed to having those talks. We have been having those talks, and hopefully that'll come through to fruition real soon.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you to your team. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Campbell.
Thank you, Councilor Siomo, and Commissioner, Superintendents, thank you, Lisa, for the work that you guys do, as well as the men and women who are still at headquarters and, of course, in our districts working as we sit here. It's a tough job, we all know that, and I tell folks, however you feel about law enforcement, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., when something tragic happens, no one's calling me, usually. They're calling you guys first. So thank you for your commitment to public service and to our residents and to the city of Boston. Where do I begin? Okay. Following up on the officers, the number of officers, fully support anything you need in terms of getting to that 2,300 number. I fully support moving your current training facility out of that school to some other space that can accommodate having bigger classes, larger classes. We've been talking about that for some time. I think what many folks have been saying, even during the overview budget hearings, is what's the plan, what's the strategy, and then how do we support you? If it requires more resources, we hope to see it in the budget at some point, a new facility to do training. We hope to see it in the budget at some point. But just wanted to go on record saying I fully support all your efforts. I have C11, B3, those are my biggest districts. Was at a meeting last night with the new captain, B3. I mean, I think everyone from B3 was there, doing incredible work. C11, of course, as well. E18, I have a little bit of B2. a lot of activity happening in those districts. They need more people, so anything I can do to support you, happy to.
Just by you acknowledging that goes a long way with the officers, because often it's a thankless job, and we are doing more with less, so your acknowledgement is greatly appreciated that, you know, we have your support.
Absolutely, and we'll continue to support you guys. Specifically on the traffic and the speeding cars, we held a hearing here, I held a hearing here sometime, maybe a few months ago, with respect to what we could do to expand the existing traffic enforcement unit. Jenna was here, as well as Superintendent Kevin McGoldrick. Am I
Yes.
saying his name right?
Deputy.
We had a follow-up meeting with him at headquarters. I mean, he's phenomenal. I think you already know this. Your whole Grants Division team is phenomenal. And what I appreciated about the conversation is he had really concrete ideas of what we could do to help you guys do greater enforcement. At the top of the list was a data traffic analyst position and filling that role. I think every counselor, or most, maybe not Counselor Flaherty, but we'll pull him in. When we talk about what we can do, I think every counselor said that role was really important to the,
Yes.
to the department. And why is that? We need data in order to be really targeted. It's really, and you need sort of not just data, someone to actually analyze the reports. So I fully support that. I've expressed that to the administration. I hope to see that position in the resubmittal, because I think it's one way that we can say that we're doing something on the enforcement side to allow Superintendent McGoldrick and others to do their job more efficiently and effectively. So I just wanted to put that on the record.
And what I like about that, it shows that we're responding to the needs and the calls to service, and that we are fair and impartial, and that we're not just picking on a certain area or a certain neighborhood. We have an analyst, then that shows these are where the most accidents are and traffic infractions. So just
So
lets
I
everyone
fully
know
support
we're doing
that,
things
and
fairly.
we'll keep
and
pushing for it. In addition, another piece of the conversation that we followed up with him at headquarters was with respect to the motorcycle unit or other existing units that you could either expand or add to in order to augment or supplement the work of the traffic unit. And, you know, he had some creative ideas, I think, about where you might be able to pull some officers, obviously with new men and women coming into certain districts. I think you have to go through some years of training before you can even join the motorcycle unit. But, you know, and you mentioned the cadets, how could they be used for enforcement? Obviously not in some of the trickier situations. Would love to continue that conversation with you guys too, because I think it's a way for us to respond to our constituents to say, not only do we have this analyst position and why this is important, but there's also some movement on the BPD side to either move folks into a motorcycle unit, use some of those guys for traffic enforcement, they put more bodies out there to do the work at the same time that you're reviewing this data. It was the beginning of a conversation, but I hope that we can maybe see some sort of plan from you guys, given obviously you have to weigh incidents of crime, the fact that you're down, I don't know, a few hundred people and officers to do the work. But, you know, enforcement is a big one. In a lot of districts, but we know you can't do it alone. So anything that I can do to support conversations around augmenting or supplementing what you already have, happy to join those conversations as well.
We appreciate further conversations, but as we've all been touching upon, as we alluded to earlier, we need more officers.
We recently put a posting, out department-wide for mobile operations. We're opening up to put some more officers in there. So, and it is a very selective unit because they wear a lot of different hats, if you will. That process is going to be taking place, and we're trying to coincide that with the release of the class that comes out to be able to augment some of the resources that we have over there. So we are in the process of looking to recruit some motivated candidates from the Boston Police to go over there.
That's how it moves.
That's awesome.
The more folks we have in the street, when we hit the 115 graduate, we'll be able to make other movements.
That's awesome. That's a great update. I can wait to the next round.
Thank you. Councilor Zakem.
Chairman, good afternoon, Commissioner, team, great to have you here. Let me just first add my voice to the chorus that this body routinely in budget time and otherwise talks about how we want to support more sworn personnel at BPD. If that's a question of a bigger training facility, more funding, I think that would go a long way towards addressing many of the concerns we hear from constituents and making this a safer city as we continue to grow. So thank you. It's quite clear you have a lot of allies here on that front. When it comes to increasing the staffing, is that a good way to address issues of, our overtime spending? That would typically reduce the overtime budget if we had more officers. Obviously, it balances out in salary and benefits and everything else, but it's certainly more predictable. Is that correct?
Yes, and before I give a full answer on that, I definitely have my subject matter experts to the right. I'm going to tell you right now, last year we lost 7 officers. And if you don't think stress and being tired factors in, suicide, cancer, heart attack, and almost another 8 to heart attacks. Quite frankly, we're tired. Yeah. We're ordering officers for several tours of duty. They just want to go home. I know you see in the papers, oh, look how much money they're making, but I actually have officers dying. So yes, the overtime is taking a toll, and it's because of the amount of officers that aren't on the streets. But to answer your question more specifically.
Yes, so we do track our overtime and what it's used for, and, obviously we have major events, we have, Super Bowl parade, things like that, that we have to budget overtime for. But across the board, replacement overtime to make sure that we can cover 911 calls is by far the largest allocation of overtime. In some of the other areas, we've managed to reduce those categories, but because of staffing issues, that replacement, it's just something that we have to deal with, and we have to put officers on the street to field those 911 calls, and that just drives that replacement overtime.
Well, I think whatever we can do, and I can do personally as a member of this body, at least for the next 7 months, to help, whether it's through the budget or through advocacy, I think it's pretty unanimous. We need several hundred more sworn officers, and we agree with you on that, and would like to see that happen in the city. Moving on to another topic, we had a hearing in our Civil Rights Committee a few weeks back, Commissioner, around the Boston Trust Act and enforcement thereof, and I appreciate your participation and some of your colleagues on that. We have some outstanding information requests that are now approaching 5 weeks old to continue exploring how we can strengthen that, which is a goal that you, the mayor, I think this body shares. I do think it's important for this body during our budget oversight process, but overall oversight process to have that information. Do you have any time or date that we can expect those requests to be responded to?
I can just tell you, I personally know, they are working on that. I know some of the requests, having to do with correspondence, which is, I think, the number in the thousands and all that. But I could just honestly tell you that they are working on that currently as we speak. I can follow up with you for exact timeline, but, there's been multiple meetings, and that is actually in the works.
I appreciate that, because we did have a meeting with Corporation Counsel and the Mayor's office, and we're trying to work out some ways to get some of the smaller segments. It was a 4-part request, and apparently one of them, the one that asked for communications between your department and ICE for the last 3 calendar years, or rather year-to-date from 2017, told there was about over 100,000 responsive documents. I would say that alone is somewhat concerning, that there's that much communication back and forth with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So to the extent that we can have that information, we want to work with you and the mayor to pass new legislation to make sure, just as you started off talking about, Commissioner, that everyone in this city is going to feel comfortable interacting with the men and women of the Boston Police Department.
Yes, sir.
I think that's critical.
Thank you.
And then I know I'm running out of time on this round. The chairman's got his gavel ready to go. In the personnel budget, there were a couple lines for liaison agents. Can you explain what that is? Is that something liaising with other law enforcement, other city departments, or is it just, I'm taking sort of the plain English definition of a liaison agent and adding it on. There's about, it looks like 11 positions, around $50,000 each.
There's various liaisons, but we're giving you specific answers. I know we have a couple of liaisons in Area C11 that are to the Vietnamese community, Tron and Liu.
So that's typically like a CSO type
Right, but
position?
there are more, so we want to give you the proper answer due to your question, as well as we have a Cabo Verde liaison. This is Katia Xavier. Anyone just want to comment? Yes.
So I think what you're referring to is the line item for 2 liaison positions. I think those are just, happen to be the way they're coded. Those are a radio technician and a senior programmer. But I think that's just some old arcane language that puts them in that classification. We do have liaison, people in the districts for different functions, but I think the ones you're referring to, that's just.
So those other liaisons would be under the regular personnel line items, similar to our officers who are liaising with federal agencies, with state law enforcement. That's not a separate position. It's someone who's in. Okay. I heard the buzzer, Mr. Chairman.
Definitely not.
Thank you. Councilor Janey.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And first, I just want to thank the commissioner, the deputies here, as well as your entire team for the work that you do every day. A special thank you for participating in my Easter egg hunt a couple of weeks back. We had the ice cream truck. It was a big hit. So thank you for that. Want to also just express how thrilled I am to have a new Bureau for Community Engagement headed by Superintendent Nora Bastian. Thank you for your work. Very excited about that. And also a new captain for B2 in Roxbury, so definitely want to shout out Captain Facey. I'm very interested in understanding how this budget will get us closer to a number of the things that you already addressed in your presentation, and some of the questions that my colleagues have already asked. I know you mentioned body cameras, implementation of that. That is something that I've been advocating for before I got here, since I've gotten here, and I'd just like to understand where we are in the process. So I know the pilot's over, and we've got to move forward. You're currently negotiating. What's happening with the body cameras?
Yes, we're definitely moving forward.
Do we have a timeline, though, an expectation of when we might see some?
Hopefully by mid-June.
That officers will have body cameras this June?
At present, we have officers trained
Yep.
to go forth and wear the body-worn cameras in area C11 Dorchester, C6, South Boston, and the gang unit. And following that, in mid-June, we're going to start training other districts as well, so we can keep moving right along.
Wonderful. Right. And so full implementation would be based on that timeline and the training?
Full implementation, because we have to roll them out district by district.
Exactly. So what can we expect in terms of full implementation by the end of the year?
So as of today, projected is probably June 17th.
For full implementation, meaning that every officer?
The implementation of, not the full implementation.
Okay.
Let me go to my subject matter experts, because I had a discussion before. I had a discussion with, they weren't privy to when I came in here, that hopefully, if all talks go well, that we could be committed to rolling out C11, C6, and the gang unit by June 17th.
And then we'll continue to train and roll out?
Then we will continue to go district by district.
Is it reasonable to expect full implementation by the end of this calendar year? Or is that unreasonable?
We would hope so.
Okay.
Because after that, it's going to be District 2, Roxbury.
Wonderful.
Mattapan.
Wonderful.
And the South End.
Wonderful. What about investments for unsolved homicides? And I know how hard your team is working, and I look forward. I think I mentioned to you earlier that me and some of my colleagues, Councilor Matt O'Malley and Councilor Campbell, I introduced a hearing order on combating summer violence. What do we do in terms of investments in this budget for unsolved homicides? I'd love to see more in terms of walking beats, community policing, opioid, how we're dealing with that, and I know for sure, and I try to tell people, whether businesses or residents in our community, anyone who will listen, I know we won't arrest our way out of that problem. As you've already indicated, we've got to get at the root cause as to why people are abusing substances. But in the meantime, we do have this epidemic in our city, and we have to help people get treatment for sure. But it's also taking a toll on businesses and residents when they see this activity happening. There's also prostitution on Blue Hill Avenue that has been ongoing and a problem for years. I'd be interested in what in this budget will address that in terms of really going after the Johns, and not so much the women who are out there, but the
Definitely
Johns.
do not treat the women in the trade as suspects. They are victims. Somewhere along the line, someone's failed them. We realize that, and we're going to make sure they get the help that they need.
I know the buzzer's going to go, so just to sum up, I'd like to understand what in this budget will address the opioid crisis, doing more around community policing, bikes, walking beats, et cetera. Body cameras we've already discussed. I certainly support more officers. I know that we're down and would certainly.
And a recent promotion is to this man right here to my left, far left, and that's Deputy Stratton. I think you'll enjoy
Good afternoon,
hearing what he
everybody.
says.
Some of the things we're doing to address the opioid crisis, we understood we couldn't arrest our way out of it. The law enforcement efforts are going to continue. The drug trafficking, low-level drug distribution enforcement, that's going to continue. But what we've realized is we have to expand our role into intervention, prevention, and outreach. So what we have been doing is training officers, not only in crisis intervention training to deal with mental health-related issues, we're getting our officers training through PARI, the Police Assisted Addiction Recovery Initiative, in how to deal with people suffering from substance use disorder. This training gives them a better understanding of what people are going through and how we can better assist them, and what services are available to them and how to access those services. So that training and building partnerships with agencies like the Mayor's Office of Recovery Services gives us the resources to go out and engage people in conversation on the street, proactively try to get them to self-admit to services, to treatment, to detox center, long-term recovery, and then housing and job training. The biggest hurdle we have to overcome is when we interact with people on the street and they're ready to go into treatment, we need to know where to take them. And through our partnerships with the Mayor's Office of Recovery Services and PARI, we're able to recognize resources, facilities that'll have open beds available. We're getting updates every day of beds that are available. So when we're out there, we're engaging folks, and they say they're ready for help, we're able to get them right to a treatment facility. They go right in the police car, they're driven right to a facility. So what we're trying to do is lean more away from arrest and more into treatment and services. So when we're out there and we're dealing with these individuals that are suffering from substance use disorder, if you have low-level warrants, we'll work with you. We'll get you into a detox center, let you get the treatment, and when you're done with the treatment, we'll work on resolving the warrants through the court system. So our approach is go down there, address as many folks as you can, engage them in communication, build a level of trust, let them know that we're not only there for enforcement, we're there for help. And through the training that these officers are receiving, it has changed their perception of the problem and how to handle it. These officers are more engaging, more understanding, and more patient. And so we're out there every day communicating. People are approaching us. They're not afraid to come up to us and ask for the help now. So, and having those resources and those partnerships has made it easier for us to get people off the street right then and there and into treatment. So in the last several months, we've been very successful at getting a lot of people off the street into treatment. The hurdles we have to overcome is once they're coming out of detox, is getting them into long-term care, the beds that are available for long-term care. For every 8 people that go into detox, when they come out, there's only a bed available for 1.
For every 8, there's only 1 available bed.
For long-term care.
Yeah, that's what we're up against.
So that's why we're seeing a lot of people coming back to the area, and we have to keep engaging them in conversation and putting them back into the services.
We
Thank you.
definitely need that bridge to be built as well.
Yes.
The wraparound services are critical. We're very effective at getting people into detox, but we got to bridge that gap from detox into the long-term care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We are working on that bridge.
Good.
Yeah, we got to go over to Quincy and convince them that the bridge is needed as well. This is a regional issue, certainly not a city of Boston issue. And other towns and neighborhoods throughout Massachusetts have to realize that. But thank you very much, Commissioner and Chief and all the supers and
Thank you for your service as
Director
well, sir.
O'Brien. It's always a pleasure to have you in front of me. I want to first thank the officers that work in district, in my district, District 5, your district E and B. Captain Gillespie, his staff is always great. We're texting each other constantly for anything that's going on in his area. I met Captain Fitzpatrick last night at the Colorado Neighborhood Association, and he was well received by that group. Mrs. Kincaid gave him the wink and the nod, so he apparently is good to go. If she gives him the green light, he's good to go. My fellow colleague, the Councilor at Large from South Boston, was talking about the recruiting class of the 120 recruits, and you and I have had long conversations about this, I love having the academy in Hyde Park, but it's an old grammar school. And the first police force in the United States of America is Boston, and to have an antiquated grammar school training the greatest officers on the planet, in my opinion, is ridiculous. And whether we need to create a task force or a committee or a team, I don't care what you call it, with all the developments going on in the city right now, there is some land available in and around our area, and we need to really take a hard look at what's going on.
We would greatly appreciate that.
Because Councilor Flaherty was talking about it, and I had a lot of concerns about the retirement stuff, and you've addressed that. You know, when you're ordering officers to third shift, I'm worried about their health, and I know you're worried about their health as well. And if we can only put through, 50, 60, 70, 80 people through the academy at a time, that's just certainly not sufficient. Never mind the fact that you have officers that need new training to learn new things, and you don't have the room for it. I'm the chair of public safety and criminal justice. I would love to help you in any way start looking at land. The MBTA has land that they're looking to move. These are easy gaps that we can fill by utilizing the mayor's bully pulpit as well as the city councilors to push the MBTA, some of these land that they're just RFPing out. There's land swap deals that could possibly happen, but to have an antiquated facility like you have now is it's really irresponsible for us, and we need to move on with that. And we can talk about that offline, but I wanted to.
We appreciate. We've talked before. Again, yeah, I'm glad you brought to light the in-service aspect of things too, because you've seen the problems we've had across the country. We learn from those, and they're addressed in in-service training to increase and expound upon our fair and impartial policing components, procedural justice, de-escalation, updates on laws, procedures, training. So to have an academy class in and then have to train new detectives and new promotees is a definite strain. We definitely need a new Boston Police Academy.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. I know, when you're sleepy, you don't make great decisions sometimes. And I would hate to have a Boston police officer make a difficult decision when he or she is exhausted.
Thank you, sir.
So we've talked about traffic. So in Boston, I get more calls about traffic as a district counselor than any other problem we have, right? You're either going too slow or you're going too fast. We've talked about the Tango cars. I won't pound it. But we have, in the past, I really saw more of the bicycles in the districts. And I brought this up before your time, that I'd love to see the bicycles get back into the district. And the reason being is I look at, say, Rosendale, for instance. Rosendale is a congested area. People cut through. Same thing with Reedville area. A CSO officer can get from Fallon Field to Healy Field in about 6 minutes on a bike. He's going to have to put his blue lights on to get there in 15 minutes from that distance. And I saw really positive stuff. Donnie Powell and Matty Conley were on the bikes before.
constantly going to the parks and sitting down with the kids, and whether they're giving out the police badge stickers or whatever, it builds that relationship when the kids are toddlers in those tot lots. So I don't know if you can just give me a quick briefing of where the bikes are now, what they're distributed as, and how can we possibly get them back into the district a bit more.
Okay. Would you address that?
So we currently have a citywide bicycle unit that we deploy to our hotspots. We also have district bicycle officers that are basically assigned by the district captain, depending on what issues he has. And so riding a bicycle is a voluntary assignment. Some of our CSO officers do ride bicycles. Some of them choose not to. It's certainly not a requirement. Going into the summer months, what we do in some of our districts, we put out additional bicycle patrols on the days of first pass. We supplement those so they don't go against the staffing levels. So for the most part, we're actually paying overtime to put those bicycles out there. But we do that in some of our busier districts, District 1, District 2, 3, 4, 13, 11, where we're supplementing the citywide bicycle officers that are out there, along with some of the bicycle officers that may be either a walking beat or CSOs that are riding bikes.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Chair.
you. Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioner. I'm proud to call you my commissioner and your staff. Great work that everybody does. First, let me thank you for the Windermere response we had the other night. Paul, thank you for coming out. Paul Donovan, Superintendent. I think it was important to just get in front of people there and let them know they were supported. We also had trauma response teams, so thank you for that. The opiate response squad, Superintendent Stratton, that's what you were talking about, how you connect along with when you were talking earlier. Is that the opiate response squad?
That's in addition to that unit. That unit primarily responds to somebody who suffered a non-fatal overdose.
Okay.
They'll go into their home, meet with those persons, meet with the families, try to provide them with the services. So that's kind of a reactive unit, but they're also doing the proactive stuff, going to the union halls, giving seminars on the services available to any workers who are going to need
So
assistance.
this is over and above what you guys are doing on the street down at Southampton or wherever.
Exactly.
Wherever
So
you need to be.
the guys out on the street are more proactive. They're going up to people who are in that area that are seeking the services and then hanging around after. And the ones who aren't seeking the services but are in the middle of an addiction, proactively engaging them in conversation to get them the services they need. So we're hitting it on both fronts.
Nice job, nice job. Are you using the Section 35 at all? Are we using that tool at all?
That's an important
Can you give me a
tool.
sense of how much we're using it and where?
It's a great.
We're using a lot of Section 35 on individuals in
Like
several
down
areas.
at South, like down around there or
A
citywide?
majority of them are probably coming from the Melnia, Cass, and Mass Ave area, but it's happening throughout the city because these offices are going down to Copley, down to the Boston Common. District A1 does a lot through Mass General. A bulk of them are happening down at Mass Ave and Cass because that's where most of the people are forming up, because that's where all the services are. So the officers that are assigned to that area are interacting with those individuals on a daily basis. They know them very well.
They know who they are and they know that.
And they're able to make enough observations to complete an affidavit to file a Section 35 and go through the court to get the warrant and take them into
Is
custody.
everything still going through West Roxbury? Have we had any additional court buy-in?
Probably 90% of them are going through West Roxbury Court because they've got a streamlined process where the officers can complete the affidavit, fax it to the court. The officer does not have to remain at the court. We get the client or the person to the court, and the officer does not have to remain for the hearing.
Are any other courts, are we able to get into any other courts
I'm
using
going
that
to
same
be
system?
having a meeting pretty soon with Judge Coffey from West Roxbury Court, and the Charlestown District Court wants to start up the process.
What about South Boston? Would they be closest to Southampton?
I would love to get South Boston on board as well. I think that court would be very practical because we are taking a lot of people out of Mass Ave and Cass and going to West Roxbury Court. So South Boston Court, we would love to get them on board
Do we
as well.
have an ongoing conversation with them now?
Not at this point.
Okay.
Counselor, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a couple other folks that are helping us out.
Sure.
Behind you is Dr. Jenna Savage, who helps us out. But we work with several first justices as well. So First Justice Coffey, McDonald, McCormick, and Weingarten have been instrumental in working with us, not only opioid homelessness, veterans housing. They've been instrumental, and they're working hand in hand with the Boston Police, as well as the Boston Public Health Commission with Chief Martinez. So it is definitely not a task that's solely the onus of the BPD. We have some great partnerships in place.
Well, that's how we're going to get to the root of
dealing
it,
with Yes.
Commissioner. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, without the partnership of Judge Coffey starting the pilot program, we'd
Yeah.
be back where we were
And
several years
it's
ago.
controversial, but I think it can be effective because you would think that, maybe not a majority, but the people that are out there shooting poison into their system, they're not necessarily capable of making a decision. So sometimes I would have to believe that there has to be people at the end of that 30 days that would have never thought they would have ever had that 30 days, so.
We're finding people that were pulling off the street who are telling us at that point, I need you to Section 35.
Quickest way to get in,
At this time, because I'm not going to stay in treatment.
Yeah.
And then when they do come out, a lot of them are very thankful. So it's a necessary tool in certain cases.
Yeah.
You don't want to do it all the time because voluntary commitment is more successful. But some of these individuals in the throes of addiction are not in a position to make
And
this
do we have a
decision.
sense of what we're doing weekly on that? Like how many you think we're doing out of Mass and Cass?
Well, Friday, we went down there and we targeted the intersection of Mass and Cass, and we took 4 individuals out of there on warrants. 3 of them went into recovery, 1 refused services and was arrested on the warrants.
So if they refuse the service, they go to jail?
You're given a choice. You can go into treatment and we'll handle your warrants later, or you can go to jail right now. And in addition to those 4 on one day, the newest officer just assigned to the outreach team, Josh De La Rosa, over the last 2 weeks has probably gotten 8 people into recovery. On his own.
Without a Section 35,
He just goes down there on a
talking to
daily
them.
basis. He's talking to people. He's building that level of trust, and he's gotten about 8 people out of there and driven them to detox centers.
Yeah, good.
Incredible at communicating, and I'd like to thank Deputy Stratton. Also, feedback that I'm getting is that once people learn more about that Section 35 process, a lot of people are returning to their respective cities and towns because what we failed to mention, there's a great population down there that are not residents of the city of Boston.
So even just that threat hanging there is causing
Yes,
people to
certain
leave?
people are like, you know what, I'm going back. And trust me, it's even from other states, people come here.
Yeah, I know.
So we're dealing with a lot. We're not just dealing with Boston residents, but and thank you for your continued support.
Yeah, in the just saying that for every 8 people coming out, there's only 1 step-up bed. That's exactly what we need to be shopping to Quincy right there, because that's what we're looking at, the long-term recovery, that second stop there. If we get everyone 30 days, done with 30 days, that's exactly what we need.
Trust me, we're getting people from Quincy, so.
No, I know we're getting, yeah, exactly, but we have to tell them why we need the bridge, so, thank you.
And we've been joined by City Councilor at Large Michelle Wu. Chair recognizes Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Commissioner, to your team, thank you for the incredible work you do each and every day. We have the finest police force in the country, in Boston, and I'm incredibly grateful for the great work of all of you and the people who aren't sitting here now but are out doing the work, particularly Captain Greeland and his team in E13, Captain Comiskey and her team in E5, Captain Dan Alecki, who I've been lucky enough to go on ride-alongs with. I usually get about 3 words in edgewise when I'm with the Cap. Nicole England, Ed Roach, Bill Jones, George Kays, Angie Aller, and Stephen O'Neill. And
All hard workers.
Great workers and great ambassadors for this important department. And we're just very grateful. It is not surprising that I think every counselor brought up the need for pedestrian, for cyclist safety. It has been my top priority this year. We've had some absolutely tragic and just crashes in our neighborhoods that have resulted in death. We've seen some good sort of reaction to that, and there's been some great work happening with transportation. A lot of it is sort of infrastructure stuff, but as it relates to sort of enforcement and data collecting, I just wanted to echo the real need the council president brought up in terms of funding and hiring the data traffic analyst. It's absolutely crucial. It's absolutely crucial that we recognize that we need to have enforcement increased. So I know that I know we all agree with that, but I will continue to make that push. Similarly, I mentioned a number of the community service officers. We had, and I wanted to thank him, he's retired, George Diaz at Mildred Haley, but Mildred Haley is the former Bromley Heath Housing Development, as everyone knows. I believe that position hasn't yet been filled, and I'm just really hopeful as we get into the summer months that we'll have a replacement for Officer Diaz.
That has to be a thoroughly vetted position to make sure we have the right person in place that can speak to the youth in that community, the seniors, and the population there at large. So
completely understood, and I trust you, Commish, but at least I assume the work's being done, and you're hopefully beginning that process, because we're obviously really concerned as the temperature should be getting a little bit warmer soon.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the hub and core model and efforts that have happened in JP and I think District 1 as well in East Boston?
Sure. I can address that.
Sure.
The hub model, that's a great program, and I notice you mentioned Angie Aller. She's a part of that process. The hub program is a valuable tool for the police department because what it does is it brings a group of professionals together from all fields in the community that can provide services to individuals suffering from mental health, substance use disorder, or homelessness, or a young individual getting caught up in gang activity. When these hub tables form, everybody can come to the meeting and bring a name, a referral of somebody they think that's having difficulty, somebody that needs assistance. And she or he will talk about that individual and talk about what crisis they're experiencing, and then everybody in the room will get together and say, is this person in acute crisis? And if they are, then the next step is to decide who's going to be best able to provide services to this individual. By the end of the meeting, you've got 1 or 3 or 4 people who are going to come together and be able to address the needs of that service, that individual. The reason the hub model is critical because most of the folks that are getting referred to the program are people that we're getting radio calls for multiple times a week, if not a day. So if you're seeing this person several times a week and the radio calls keep coming in, we have to do something different. The hub model is going to help alleviate this problem because you get all these people in the room that can provide the appropriate services and address the needs of this individual. And the ultimate goal is to reduce those calls for service. The ultimate goal is to get them the services and the help they need, but a byproduct of that is reduced calls for services to the police department.
That's correct.
We currently have the hub model in District 13. It's kind of new, so it hasn't really taken off yet. It's been in A7 for a little while, so it's kind of established.
Yeah.
Are
you looking to expand it even further
The
than that?
next steps for the hub program are to bring all the district captains in, give a training on what the hub model is and what it does, what it can provide for your district, and expand it. I'd love to expand it to District B2 next, B3 and Mattapian, and steadily get it into all the districts, because each district will experience one or more individual that they're dealing with on a regular basis. If you can get this core group of people to meet every week and talk about these individuals and get them the help they need, we're going to reduce costs.
Absolutely. No, I think it's hugely successful. I'm glad to hear it's
We've had
expansion.
discussions with President Campbell as well.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you, Commissioner. Dr. O'Brien, while I have you here, you may have gone over this. If I stepped out, I apologize. The budget line item 55400 lease purchase, we're seeing a decrease of about $1.5 million. Is that vehicles that we're not?
No, it's a reduction in the debt.
Oh.
The lease purchase program. Last year, our lease purchase program was funded through operating funds, and which lowered the debt service payment, so therefore that's the decrease of the 1.5.
Okay, terrific. And I also noticed legal liabilities went down. That's great.
Yes.
So well done on that. Commish, thank you for sort of your comments as it relates to efforts to reduce overtime and also sort of the incredible toll that this causes officers and their families. I've known members of whom we have lost, constituents, friends of mine. So I know you and I have talked offline about this, about sort of the need to make sure there's some real supports, for self-care for the officers. So I know that's something you feel strongly about.
We have an officer wellness campaign going, and it's doing very well. The Boston Police Department has partnered with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. All of the Boston police unions are in communication and or partnered with a great medical facilities to provide support to the officers.
That's great, that's great. And then there has also been seems like a fairly high utility cost increase. It's line 52,200, about just under $500,000. I just wonder, in sort of the stations, has there been any effort to look at some energy efficiencies or more energy efficient?
I think the city as a whole is looking at energy efficiencies, but with respect to increased utility costs and especially auto energy supplies, those are just as a result of increased rates that we're seeing from this year compared to last year.
Well, I know. At-large Councilor Wu and I are excited to see community choice energy, which will see better savings and higher renewables. So it is a win-win all around. So appreciate that. Finally, just wanted to also echo my incredible, full-throated support for increased staffing levels, making sure that you guys have your teams to really provide the incredible growth and explosion population in the city. And I know we stand completely united to make sure that happens. So thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate it. Thank you,
Thank you. Councilor Asabi George?
Probably Counselor Wu?
I'm going around. Going around.
Oh, very good. Thank you. I was not expecting to go next, so I am ready to go. Thank you. And thank you all for your very thoughtful answers today, because it's been a lot of good information. I do want to just echo, I think it's been mentioned 2 or 3 times now, the crash analyst position through you guys. I think that position is just very much needed, and it's a good way for you to be connected to transportation. My other question is on the first responder naloxone grant that was part of some of the work that I think was initiated last year. And is that still happening, and officers have access to naloxone, and that training happening across the district?
You want me to speak on that? Yes.
When I came in, the officers were getting the naloxone. They were getting the 2 milligram kits that had to be assembled, and it had kind of an awkward carrier. So we were giving that out to the officers, and I think we had maybe 400 doses that were given out. What we did, we looked at the program, and we saw that it was difficult to get it together in a stressful situation. They really couldn't keep it on their belt practically, so it was in the cruiser sometimes. So what we did, we looked at it, and we saw that a lot of agencies were using the 4 milligram naloxone, and it's an already assembled pump. You just take it out and you pump, no assembly required, and it's able to be carried in a carrier worn right on the belt. You can put gloves right in with it. It had a plastic insert. So we did a lot of work to upgrade from the 2 milligram to the 4 milligram. 4 milligram, that's being purchased. The carriers are being purchased. So we're going to have...
And do we have the funds to replace as necessary?
I believe the bids went out to get it, so I believe we do have the funding and the grant to do it, and it's just a matter of getting the bids and the requisitions out, and we're going to get it.
What's the timeline, do you think, on that?
I would say probably within a month we should have it and start disseminating to the officers in the street.
And 50,000 is in a grant, and another 50,000 has been allocated in operating funds for naloxone.
Oh, great. That's great. Thank you for that. And then my other question is around patron safety. We've had a couple of incidents, unfortunate, in our city. Can we talk a little bit about our plan going into the summer around patron safety, especially as, the summer months, the warmer months, people are out more, and thinking about the safety of our residents across the city, especially as they experience nightlife, but then also our visitors to the city, whether they're tourists or college students visiting and going to our establishments.
So each of our district captains, especially for this great destination city, Area A1 and District 4, that cover downtown and the South End, which also covers Boylston Street and Newberry Street, Back Bay. They're very cognizant of things that have happened in the past with our patrons, with our visitors, and so part of the summer safety initiative that is incorporated to address any problems there as well.
And I know you had, following the second incident, which resulted in the death of a young woman, a young resident of the city, there was a community meeting that talked about sort of, not about that case in particular, but some of the things that your department is paying attention to in a particular way when we think about patron safety.
So Definitely. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that not only in area A1 and D4, but the entire city. We know there are hunters and predators, and we don't want displacement where they just move to another district. So we did have a meeting with the licensed premises owners, our great folks here at City Hall and the BPD, to see how we can better protect the patrons, the residents, and anyone visiting this city. We just want to be on the same page and make sure that we're utilizing the best technology available, the best practices, and best protocol. Out of that meeting, we established a committee, and they have been working together, kind of like creating a guidebook for everybody to go by in the entire city. And that meeting's gone well, and I believe we're should be coming out with something soon. But what we want everyone to know is this wasn't a one-time meeting. This wasn't a flash in the pan. We are continually working together with the licensed premises owners, the City of Boston, and the BPD. Again, we want to be clear that we're on the same page about protecting the citizens, the patrons, anyone visiting the cities. We want to be sure that everyone knows we're on the same page about using the best technology available without being too intrusive on anyone's personal rights. So those are camera systems, license readers as well, and going forward with the best protocol as to what happens when you have a situation in a licensed premise. Who should you call? How should you communicate? How can you help facilitate an investigation? So we're on the same page, and our hopes that real soon we'll be able to have a complete guidebook for everyone to follow.
Great, and that, I think that it is important to note that this isn't just for the downtown. This is our establishments across the city. There just happen to be 2 higher profile cases that initiated in downtown Boston. That work of that committee with those protocols, those recommendations, would there also be some training for establishment owners and or operators and staff? Chief?
Council, that's like come up. I just want to recognize the work of Superintendent Donovan and Captain Sexton from the Investigative Bureau, the ones that kind of spearheaded that. The Commissioner alluded to it, an offshoot of that big meeting we had. Captain Sexton and Superintendent Donovan have been in touch with these business owners. That led to another smaller meeting we just had at headquarters. Some of these, when we looked at the protocol, we have protocols like different cities have them for their nightlife, okay? So we started looking at that and seeing how we could fit that into Boston. Each city's unique in their nightlife and, in their cities in general. In some clubs, they do already have kind of pre-existing training for them, and some of them didn't. The purpose of these meetings, the continuous meetings we've had is, we have the different business owners, and they're throwing out different ideas to the other club owners, and they're like, "Oh, geez, that's a good idea. We're going to adopt that." So, yeah, that was one of the main topics is getting the staff training. Now, obviously, as we know, a lot of these clubs, wherever they are in the city, their door people and their staff kind of transient. A lot of them, some will stay, some established places they stay a little longer, but it's how you get this training for these people, how to get them to stay there a little bit longer than they do. And I think, they were very receptive to that. In the training, we're looking at would cover anything from obviously intoxicated patrons, which, has led to some of these incidents we've talked about, incidents of violence that happen inside there, and then whether it's a fire, God forbid, a terrorist attack or anything like that. But, just from the couple of meetings and that meeting I attended, the one we had at headquarters, I think we're making great strides towards that, and they were very receptive to that. And like you said, we had representation from, establishments that just weren't from downtown too. So it was good.
Great, great, and it's happy to hear that the operators are talking to each other, because there's certainly examples of best practices that could be replicated or tweaked to work in other establishments across the city. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you,
Can I
Councilor.
just say one thing on that? One of the things we have to overcome with the nightclubs, the establishments, is the perception by them that when they call us, that they get in trouble for calling us. And by virtue of them not calling us, the situation just gets worse oftentimes. So we're working with them to let them know that if they contact us, they advise us of what's going on, they bring it to our attention, that we're then going to work with them, with the licensing board, and take everything into consideration about what has happened, so that it's, it's not going to adversely affect, their business. Not in every instance, but we are going to work with them. If we can overcome that perception with them, I think we'll be in much better shape going forward.
Thank you. Councilor Campbell.
Thank you, Councilor Siomo. For the sake of time, I'm just going to, I guess, fly through a couple of things. Commissioner, you talked about the Youth Development Fund in your opening remarks. Superintendent Daley, I know you did a lot of work on that as well. Superintendent Baston, the same thing in your grants division. Care about that deeply, was happy to see that set up. I'm still pushing this cycle to double it again, just going on record.
Thank you.
I know you fully support this, so I appreciate your team's efforts to roll this out and to get the money in more organizations serving our youth. Just had a chance to connect with probably 15 or 20 of them recently in a convening, and they each shared stories about the impact of the monies on their work, and it's remarkable. So we'll keep pushing to hopefully get it doubled again in this.
Thank you for your support, too.
Thank you. Thank you also for the support with respect to the Beat Cops funding at the state level. We're pushing now on the Senate side for something to happen there, so it's a good thing. So thank you. Body cameras. We had, I filed a hearing order last year. We filed it again this year. Would love to have a hearing in the chamber, or preferably in the chamber, with respect to updates on this. I know Councilor Janey asked some questions around full implementation mid-June. I know there's sometimes complexities with negotiating with the union.
That is hopeful, because there are complexities.
Right, and I know obviously we're not privy to those meetings, and you can only share so much, right, with the public as you're negotiating different things, but would love to have that hearing at some point in the near future so that we can talk about, why C11, C6 gang unit, why that made sense to start there, where we go with phase 2 or phase 3, how we're spending the $2 million allotted in the budget cycle last year. So I was pinging the administration on this. Would love to sort of hopefully get a hearing scheduled for that sooner than later, given that we're trying to do something, it looks like, by mid-June.
And for the record, if I may add, I'd like to thank you. I know he's not here now, but Tito Jackson as well.
Exactly. Councilor Yancey as well.
Yes, and Councilor Yancey, for helping to facilitate those hearings and meetings that we've had with the general public to help create our policy during that pilot program, and now that support that you lent then is definitely helpful now as we move forward.
And I'm excited, and a lot of advocates, including some folks at BPCAT, came to the table to participate, and now they're looking for an update. But I think it turned into a really productive process, so I want to be able to at least do something in a public space with respect to updates on that. So we'll follow up again to try to get something scheduled.
Yes.
So thank you, Commissioner, and your team. Obviously, I care and continue to care deeply about diversity, more women, more people of color, not only in police, but fire and EMS. Put out some recommendations of things I thought that we could do, some of which are within our control, some of which fall with the state. One was just releasing the data, and this is more, I think, with the mayor's office and the administration. We put out numbers on sort of dashboards that include civilian numbers coupled with sworn officers. You pull it apart and you just look at officers, the reflection of those numbers compared to the demographics of the city, it changes, right?
Yes.
It usually is more diverse when you include numbers for civilians from the various departments. There are usually more women, more people of color. You take the civilian numbers out, the people of color and women go down. And then, of course, as you go to the top tier rankings, whether it's superintendent, chiefs, the number of women and people of color is not, I think, what we want it to be. So really going to continue to press on this issue and work in partnership with you guys. Held a hearing that pulled together fire, EMS, and police in the same space. I thought it was really productive because we often have these conversations in silos. Clearly, you guys have the cadet program, fire does not. now looking at doing it for fire, but I think, what does it mean to have this conversation across all public safety agencies? I know Chief Hooley, after the hearing, is also, I think, put resources into the budget to have a diversity officer as well. So just the follow-up is, I guess, a couple of things. One, I think it's important to release the numbers so that they are a part of the scoreboard that you look at so that people can see it. We haven't quite done that yet, so I'm pushing for that again. The second is resourcing our diversity officers. You have an incredible diversity officer, and Officer Gaskins. He's amazing. He's really doing some great work. But I think he should have a budget of his own to be able to use his resources as he sees fit in order to do his job, and also to have maybe some more human capital, right, that he can pull in. I think the same for...
We are talking about it.
Yeah, and I think the same for Juan
will
at
benefit
fire,
the city.
right? The diversity officer at the fire department, which was another recommendation in the budget. So there are some concrete things I think we could be doing that we haven't quite done yet that I'm going to keep pushing on. And lastly, because, and I can wait for the next round, you know, obviously the cultural piece is a big thing, whether it is women and people of color feeling welcomed in our departments. There are always incidents you hear about. Some may not be legitimate, some may be legitimate. What we do know is that training around everything from sexual harassment, racial equity, implicit bias, the list is long, is necessary, right? I think there's a commitment by you, and we've talked about this when you took over, to make sure that you had resources to bring your teams through trainings. The fire department needs work. There's now a budget for some of this training, or our RFP out there. We have some money. So I'd be curious to hear from you. What are you undertaking in your department with respect to some of these trainings to deal with making sure that there's a cultural shift within the department in the various units to ensure that everyone, whether it's women, people of color, feel welcomed in your department?
Hey, first of all, the command staff, the captains, even at the academy level, we want everyone to know that you're welcome to the Boston Police Department, both sworn and civilian, right? And we definitely need to keep getting that messaging out there, because you may have read recent articles. I don't think one thing was mentioned about how we're progressing in the cadet program, how that helps us with diversity and inclusion, and getting more females to the table. It wasn't mentioned that in the last 8 months, every female that was up for promotion was promoted, except for one female that's going through an internal affairs process, investigation, rather. So our messaging is clear across the board: equal pay, equal treatment, equal status, and to get rid of the negative stereotypical views and perceptions. And if anybody has anything to discuss, we'll discuss them. And along with saying that our department should reflect all the neighborhoods that we serve, that means of all genders, all LGBTQ, everyone that we serve should be on our department. And we constantly state that. I think this administration is going forward. Again, with the promotions, the trainings, we definitely want to break that stereotypical view that this job is not for everyone. It is for everyone.
Thank you. Councilor Zakem.
I want to point out it's great to see the strides at the cadet program that this body worked with the mayor, your predecessor, and you in your prior role to re-implement. It's really it's encouraging to see the numbers there, both from a racial and gender diversity standpoint. So it's great. I just say it's great to see. I know that's not always at the forefront. As you know, some of the areas I represent include the Boston Common, the Boston Public Garden, areas that are gems of the city. Tourists come there, protesters come there, celebrants come there after our sports victories.
A lot of challenges there, too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I do want to say, you know, in my 5+ years in this role, we've had a great relationship both with the command staff at headquarters, with the A1 captain and officers, and it's a partnership. Could you speak a little bit towards what your officers and your office does with the park rangers, with the Friends group there, the Friends of the Public Garden, business owners like the Swan Boats, all of whom are operating there and certainly rely on each other?
Bid as well.
Yeah.
Yes. First, it all comes down to communication and a willingness to talk and have true discussions about what's happening, not only on the Boston Common, but the downtown area as well. And some of the problems that we have definitely have to do with homeless, opioid dependency, and mental health issues. And keeping in mind that those people are human too, and not be dismissive and say, what can you do about those people? So we have to address any one of the aforementioned together, whether it's BID. Captain Fong does a remarkable job in communicating with the Friends of the Commons, BID, the homeless shelters, and all of the businesses downtown. That's something that we have to keep going and keep moving forward on, as well as the judicial system will have to come in play as well.
And to that point, we did, probably 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, we had the Suffolk District Attorney's Office came and met with the Friends, some officers from A1, and it was the Swan Boats in particular. I don't know if you'd been involved at the time, but had repeat individuals who were vandalizing and breaking in, and they could only be arrested so many times, and it was the disconnect was happening at the courthouse, and the DA's office and that partnership was able to do it. So
we're definitely going to have those discussions again, because the cold hard facts are that everybody, all of the aforementioned that are doing the right thing, they deserve justice. We shouldn't have to deal with repeat violent offenders and repeat offenders. That has to be addressed, but it has to be addressed by everybody in the village. And I failed to mention our relationship with the park rangers. It's a great relationship. A matter of fact, every academy class that they graduate, I go and speak to them to let them know that they're a part of our law enforcement family, that in this state where we've been attacked by terrorists twice, that we have to be each other's eyes and ears. So the park rangers are definitely a part of our law enforcement family, and they know that, and we fully support them, and we keep them updated about what's happening on the Boston Common, in the garden, and as well, so they can be our eyes and ears and help us enforce the laws of the Commonwealth.
No, that's great to hear, and I certainly look forward to having further discussions, and I know the Friends of the Public Garden have reached out. I don't know if you had a chance to meet with them yet, and their staff or leadership.
That's coming up. I believe that's scheduled. Looking forward to meeting them.
Excellent. I think it's a great partnership, and it's something that I love to see, not just at the Public Garden, but around the city, the Friends groups that raise private money both for maintenance, capital improvements,
beautification.
In this beautification, the park ranger mounted unit. It's a great partnership, so I'm glad to see that. Before I run out of time, and this may have to come around again, I see the chairman's looking at me. Completely different topic. Just a little while ago, the city of San Francisco passed legislation banning the use of facial recognition technology by city agencies, police, transportation, others. Can you speak to what our current policy or use is on facial recognition technology at BPD?
I don't believe that technology is there yet. I'm a big techie, so to speak, and the facial recognition alone, I don't think the technology is there yet. There's been cases of mistaken identity, and I don't think that would be conducive for the Boston Police Department at this time. Now, as for body-worn cameras, camera systems, we also always have to keep in mind about the rights of the citizens that we serve, and that anything we use as pertains to technology is not too intrusive, but is fair and impartial. But for me, while I'm here, I don't think that the facial recognition is there yet.
No, I appreciate that, and one thing I do, I heard the bell, Mr. Chairman. In the article, and I would defer to your expertise on this, it did cite that Boston was one of the cities that is currently using the facial recognition technology.
That goes to tell you, don't believe everything you read in the papers. 'cause
Well, that's
we
why
do
I'm
not-
going to the source.
We do not use facial recognition, because I believe we would have discussed that. I'm talking to all of us.
Well, listen, no, I appreciate that. I share your concerns, and I'm not going to get into the weeds on it, but some of the statistics around disparities in accuracy based on race and gender are pretty stark. I'm sure you and your team have seen that. So thank you for that approach. I look forward to, if there is a point where that's being implemented, obviously this body, and I'm sure the mayor's office would want to discuss that in a transparent fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you. Councilor Edwards.
Thank you, and I apologize. I know some of my questions will be repetitive. I had to step out a couple times, but I wanted to first thank you again for our community officers in East Boston, Charlestown, and the North End. We regularly work with them. The peace walks are a huge success, especially in East Boston. I want to thank you, Nora, for reaching out and getting into more of the schools in East Boston. I think it does change what you said. There's a lot of stereotypes about who's welcome and to be actually servants, but also who is going to be surveyed or policed. And I think that's really important that communities start to see you as a partner, as someone normal to be walking around. And I've often said, I think that's, having the community policing, just walking, just being present, makes a huge difference for when someone does have an issue. You don't want to just see a police officer in crisis, because it means emergency, it means clam up, it means something wrong is happening. And I think that's a good thing. So it speaks to the outreach and the continued partnership in the community. Just asking for a quick update. This might be also with another department, but we're excited for the new police department or police station in East Boston, and I didn't know if you had a date about when you see that station coming online.
I have my experts with me.
Okay.
I know that they're looking at breaking ground this year, this
Okay.
fiscal year, and beginning the construction. Usually it's
2 to 3 years, I'm sure, before.
I would say within a year and a half.
No, it's
that they begin the construction. I think they're very close. I think it's fairly imminent that they're going to break ground. I think
Right.
one of the things was the weather. I know there's like a last minute review of the design, the final design, the architecture. I know they're going, looking at materials and things like that, trying to sort of value engineer it, but my sense is it's coming.
Breaking ground then about this year, and so,
Yeah,
okay.
we'll definitely go into construction this year and
Excellent.
hopefully be done going into next year.
So swinging over to Charlestown and the facilities on Vine Street, with the increase, and I think there's going to be a massive amount of increase in traffic with the casino. I think that the 4 a.m. liquor license is something I do not support right now. I don't think they've earned it. But I do know that it's going to bring more traffic through Charlestown. That's going to be the late night place to go, right? When everything closes at 2 a.m., I think there'll be a massive population shift to the casino if they get that 4 a.m. license. And so I brought this up, I think, last year, but I'm just curious if there's any thought about increasing the police services there. Right now, it's just, I'm going to use the wrong word, it's like an outlet or an outpost or something. We don't have a bigger team there. It's just, but I'm wondering if that might be something we have to examine, having more police presence.
So we're already in the talks with that.
Oh.
So in this regard, that Captain Fong and Captain McCormick have met with Everett. We're discussing traffic plans and all that goes into that and how that may affect, not how it may affect, it will affect
It is, yeah.
Boston, and what those plans would look like and what we would need to help facilitate the free flow of traffic, pretty much on all shifts. Because you have a casino, that's 24/7, it's not going to stop. So we are talking about that. I can get back to you when I get an update from them as to how those meetings are going. I don't know if anyone had anything to add.
No, I was gonna,
No, they have been continuing, there's been continuous meetings that have been taking place, and particularly in regards to their opening ceremony and stuff, in regards to, the traffic plan that's going to be effect for that.
Yeah.
As far as some of the issues for the late night stuff, that's still being discussed. What are we actually going to see? Because I agree totally with you. I think that's going to be you're done here at 2 o'clock, but you're not going home. And that's going to be the place to go.
Yeah, and I
And
just,
I think you will see that, right? You know, if they get that, you're gonna have people going there, and there's, you know, maybe just start coming through Charlestown, milling around through there, and obviously, you know, we're gonna have to see what that looks like, and then, you know, obviously, if that is becoming a problem in a hurry, we'll have to shift resources over there to kind of beef that up, as you said at the beginning.
yeah, and I think one of the biggest issues we've seen is just jurisdiction can be in the way of actually doing police work, even with Massport and with state police. And East Boston, we've seen that. In South Boston, we've seen that. Now we're having Everett, I guess maybe even Somerville, and potentially Cambridge, and other surrounding police forces. So
I know the chiefs.
and Somerville, sorry, trying to figure out how best we're going to deal with. We're all dealing with the burdens. I think the benefits are still up for debate about having the casino there, but I think we're all going to deal with the burdens, and I just want to make sure. And I'm glad that there's already conversations about coordinated efforts amongst the police.
And the chiefs of those respective towns are a part of the Massachusetts Major City Chiefs. We have a great relationship, and as pertains to the Seaport and Massport as well, I strongly believe that any law enforcement entities, our law enforcement family, should be working together. If jurisdictional issues have to be decided upon, that's at a legislative process, but you should have no gaps in service.
Exactly.
Because that only benefits the bad guys. So we will be working together, and we're in constant communication.
Thank you. I'll wait for the next round.
Thank you. Council Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Superintendent Daley, is there any update on the Harrison Albany camera plan? The money that we got for there was supposed to be a camera plan around Blackstone, the parks, Blackstone, Franklin, and all up near West Newton.
Yeah, I'm not sure, was that funded? Did we get the funding?
Yeah, you got it.
So I know that we're constantly, you know, installing new cameras. I'm not sure the status of those cameras at this point, but we have been talking with the Office of Emergency Management to begin sort of a citywide initiative to bring some consistency to how we deploy cameras around the city. I know cameras are very important for solving crime. The public wants more cameras. It's just been a struggle for us capacity-wise and budget-wise to get those cameras out there.
So, but if we have funding mechanisms, how can we streamline it? Like Sean, I think Sean has this plan now. It's funded monies with BPDA. So like, I'm just trying to figure out how do we move things like this along, because I have a couple different ones that money is basically just sitting there and want to implement plans.
We'd be happy to spend that money on cameras. I think I'll get Sean moving on that.
Yeah.
I think it's just a question of what the funding source is, whether we, you know, have to schedule it.
I think it was, we had to accept and expend through here, which we've already done, and it's upstairs. I just like to fast track it. It's something that's been talked about for probably 3 or 4 years or more.
Okay,
so
we'll get that done.
Okay, and like I said, there's other plans that I'm just trying to get this one done. There's other things that are happening, like I spoke with you, Commissioner, about the opportunities up around St. Mary's Hospital, Windermere. There's a company that wants to, we have another plan up there that I've gone through at Lantel. Companies prepared to donate 2 cameras. You know, maybe if there was funding someplace, I could probably find it.
We'll definitely work on that with you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your advocacy. And as well, so you know, last week we met with the new Commissioner of Transportation, interim, as well as Department of Information and Technology as pertains to how we're going to move forward together in viewing camera footage and what's available to each of us. So we vow to work in partnership.
Yeah, because the traffic
we saw
cameras.
two investigations,
Yeah.
unfortunately, involving the young ladies where the camera systems were instrumental in the investigation and both times in an arrest, as well as helping us not only to identify crime, but traffic flow patterns and problems. So you'll find the three definitely working in partnership.
Do you currently now, you guys don't have access to the traffic cameras, correct?
We do.
You do?
We've partnered with BPD. They were hesitant to record their cameras because of the added cost, but for us, those recorded cameras are very valuable. So we pay for the recording and archiving of their cameras so we can benefit from that forensic video after the fact to do investigations. And also with housing, we have access to a portion of housing cameras. So we're sort of building out a federated network across different departments and agencies to be able to leverage that video.
Have we gotten access to Villa Victoria yet? The cameras in there, do you know?
So those are privately managed, right? I don't think we have access to them. We may have case-by-case access, I know.
Yeah.
The first thing investigators do is they'll go, and I think that, they have a cooperative arrangement with the district
no
court
pushback.
detectives, yeah.
There's cooperation, definitely.
So our value in the cameras is we're usually after the fact and not live monitoring. So I think if they need to access that camera footage, I don't think there's any issue with that.
Yeah, and if you needed to access the transportation cameras, could you access them in real time?
We can. We access them, and actually we monitor them every day, and if one goes down, we'll call them and let them know.
And again, we've all met just last week, and we'll definitely be working collaboratively.
Yeah, so on body cameras, we're waiting for negotiations to finish up. Is it the negotiations for contracts, or what is the negotiation, just a body, are we just negotiating just body cameras?
We're just, on body cameras is a totally separate issue. That's what we're negotiating on. And hopefully, again, we'll be able to roll them out on June 17th.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
And that's just a discussion with the unions?
Yes, and the city.
We've been having ongoing discussions.
Rolling negotiations, maybe you could call it?
We've had many meetings with all the unions on this, so I think we've done a lot of work with them.
Okay.
The city just wants to be fair in the process.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your work, and
you,
we'll
sir.
talk offline about camera plans. I'll
Sure.
fill you guys in.
We'll let you know the progress.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Councilor Savi George? Okay. Councilor Campbell?
Thank you, Councilor Siamo. Just quickly so Councilor Flynn and I held a really productive meeting yesterday with a large number of folks doing work in the domestic violence, sexual assault space, as well as work with young kids, of course, who are being abused and sexually abused either by loved ones or folks in the community. Really powerful. And the whole conversation is leading up to a hearing that we hope to have this year. We filed it last year, we filed it again. So I'm curious with respect to incidents of domestic violence, sexual assault, what the numbers are in terms of data. Are we up, down? Where are we?
Okay. Superintendent Donovan? And if we don't have that
I don't have the
available-
exact numbers on if we're up or down. I think probably the domestic related assaults, the aggravated assaults, I think I've seen a slight uptick, not significant, but I don't have the exact numbers on that. We'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay, we can email it, that's fine.
I know this, though, we never fail in our educational process of educating the victims of domestic violence about the rights that are there for them, that we're there for them as well. And we continuously educate the community about issues with domestic violence. So not only were we reactive, but we're proactive as well.
Yeah, I mean, the conversation, it was about 2 hours. I mean, definitely, we're trying to see what more we can do, right? Even if we're great, there's always a lot more we can do. And I think when we're citing the Part 1 crime numbers, when you pull that apart, and no one had the numbers yesterday at the meeting, there was a suggestion that it was...
So I do have with me. So it's actually, it's at 0%. There's a one less incident this year versus last year. One less incident.
And what are you looking at, Superintendent?
This is the Part 1 crime reported by the Boston Police Department. So in 2018, this was as of May 12th, there were 277 incidents in 2018, and as of May 12th, 2019, there were 276 incidents. The five-year average would be 289.
And also,
And
Counselor.
we know that, obviously,
Those
you
are,
know.
yeah, those are the aggravated assaults, domestic aggravated assaults.
Okay. So I would love to get more information, and we can follow up with you guys to get more on the data and the numbers.
Just one more thing to add, sorry to
Yep.
cut you off, but it's important. We have 5 domestic violence advocates covering 8 districts. So, again, that educational component is key as well, that we actually have advocates, and we're looking to have more coverage in A1,
Yeah.
D4, and C6.
So, I mean, we recognize, and I think, you know, Councilor Flynn and I in particular came together based on conversations as candidates in certain communities, particularly certain immigrant communities with respect to incidents of domestic violence, sexual assault, and folks who don't report, right, that's real. So some of these numbers obviously may not reflect what's actually currently happening
That's
or the
true.
data that we know. So we want to, and we know obviously these domestic violence advocates, and we need more of them. So look forward to having the hearing, but if we could get data, that would be extremely helpful. And I'll follow up with you guys with respect to the hearing on that. Curious, just going back to the training piece, are folks, civilians and officers, do they undergo implicit bias, racial equity trainings, sexual harassment trainings? And if so, who undergoes those types of trainings?
So for our academy recruit officers, you definitely undergo that training, and real quickly, I'll go through it. That's in 3 components, of course. So fair and impartial policing, procedural justice, de-escalation. You have the instructors and the subject matter for the courses, but BPD takes it 2 steps further. We actually bring in people from the community, LGBTQ, NAACP, Urban League, Mothers for Justice, members from Teen Empowerment, and people from the community. So it is about addressing your unconscious and implicit biases and meeting people that you will be serving in the community. And so that's the second component of training. The third component is before our recruit officers graduate, they actually go out into the community and into those places they may have read about or seen in the news, whatever, but they go out and they interact with the people that they're going to serve in those communities,
So
especially.
do they undergo sexual harassment, implicit bias,
That's
racial
all a
equity?
part of, that's all a part of
Oh,
our
racial
training.
equity, I should
And
say.
the officers that are already out in the field receive e-training, and that's, everyone receives the training.
Does everyone receive sexual harassment training? I'm assuming, but I don't know that to be.
For the officers or?
Officers, civilians, everyone in the department, including those coming
As
through.
for officers, yes. I will
Okay.
double check for you on civilians, but I believe everyone.
Okay.
The department heads are responsible for making that aware. I know we sent out special orders.
And we can put in,
For the entire department, we sent out special orders.
Okay, so we can, I mean, we can follow up.
But I'll
because
get you the
they'll send
numbers.
these questions to you guys, but
Because
what I'm interested
not
in
being
is.
evasive, but there are new employees, and I just want to make sure that as current, up to date, we have everybody covered and exactly who's left to train.
Okay, so I'd like to understand who in the department, including those who are coming through the academy, is undergoing sexual harassment training, implicit bias training, racial equity training, to start. And then, of course, if there are other trainings, that's fine. But
Yes, we
those
can get
3
that.
in particular, curious, who in the department undergoes those?
And as a department, we have a standalone policy for bias-free policing as well. So that's definitely the culture of the BPD.
And then going back to the diversity piece, obviously language preference is a big part of the way in which departments are recruiting more officers and trying to expand the
been
diversity of the
helpful to us.
department. So BPD, I know, has done incredible work there, the fire department as well, working with HRD. Do we have a list of those folks that are joining the department through language preference, which districts they're being assigned to? Is there a list that someone could send us?
We can definitely get that for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're still in the academy. When they go out, I think that's part of the.
They'll get moved around as part of their training for the first year. So they'll go to their first station, then we'll move them again, and then they'll get a final station. So that won't happen for another year. So we try to expose, as part of their training, expose them to different neighborhoods in the city. So the first year, when during their probationary period, we kind of move them around.
So if you come out of the academy, you go through everything, you're not assigned, say, to C11 for a year?
You wouldn't be assigned to C11 for a year. You'd be assigned to C11 for a period of months.
And then you move
4
to
months,
another?
And then we'll move you to another district. And after everyone completes their probationary period, which is 12 months, then they will get their final assignment. So we won't have those final assignments for
Right.
a year.
But we will be able to tell you where they're working when they're
Okay.
rotating through until
That'd be
their
great.
final assignment. That's no problem doing that.
That'd be great. And another question that came up, this is also in the diversity conversation, is the bypass policy. Comes up in the context of BPD, comes up in the context of the fire department. The departments respond very differently with respect to the bypass policy. What I've been a little confused by is the bypass policy written down somewhere? Like, where do you go to know what it is? Who implements the bypass policy? Does it sit with you, Commissioner? Does it sit with someone else? How can you find where this is? Or is it written somewhere?
So this is for hiring.
Right, exactly, for getting onto the.
Yes.
Yes, so there is a process, it begins with, from the civil service list, moves into an investigation. And so everything is compiled and it goes to a round table. And there are representatives of the legal office, internal affairs, human resources. So we try to get a rounded perspective. And the investigator will make a recommendation, and there are some clear exclusionary factors that if those are found in the investigation, then the round table has basically a pretty clear mandate of what to do. Other times there are factors that.
Is that written down somewhere, the round table, the bypass? Where is that?
It's a practice. I'm not sure if we have it written down as a policy. It's just sort of the process that we use, and we modify it when we need to over time. But that's kind of how it works right now.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Commissioner.
Councilor Sakam.
Chairman, I'll just start off once again by just completely allying myself with the Council President's comments around diversity, training, recruitment. Again, I can't reiterate how important the cadet program is for that. I know you personally know that, Commissioner. As much fun as I know we're all having here today, this is going to be my last round of comments. I can't speak for my colleagues. Maybe you guys may be here a while still. But I just want to say that I really do appreciate this discussion we've had today and the relationship we have and that you have with the community. I don't think it's hyperbole to say that the Boston Police Department, under all of your leadership, is a model in this country, particularly for big city police departments when it comes to community relations, when it comes to handling large-scale events. Now, that might be unfair because other cities don't have championship parades every 3 months. They don't have as much practice as you all do. Hopefully, we have another one coming up soon. No, I really do appreciate that. And, as moving forward, as we continue our budget review process, I do just want to, touch again on if there's any way that we can help facilitate that increase in the number of sworn personnel, whether as Councilor McCarthy has been talking about throughout this process, it's through the training facility, whether it's budgetary. I think that addresses so many important issues. We want to be partners on that. And I know, Chief, I would like to talk to you offline about the fulfillment of those information requests so we can move forward on the Trust Act. But I do really appreciate this process and the question and answer we've been able to have here today. So that's all. Only 2 minutes. I even timed myself, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Councilor Edwards.
Just to continue on, we were talking about traffic, I think, the last time. And so I know that you had brought up, or that Councilor Campbell had brought up some of having a unit possibly within BPD. And we also had a hearing about that as well, where we talked about creating that kind of unit. And I'm just curious with the resources that you already have with the crossing guards that you have already kind of helping to move folks in traffic. Is there any way or any thought to amplifying them and helping out with police details? I'm thinking in terms of East Boston, where we still need a lot of...
I think the crossing guards are at their capacity of doing what they are doing, helping the children cross through the intersections.
Is there any...
Those are civilians, and they haven't received that training.
Tell me more.
Okay, so several were seniors, and their training definitely goes to getting the children to and from school and assisting them through the intersections. That's it. I don't think we've ever entertained moving them beyond that position that they serve.
Currently, their training basically is to stop traffic, to allow children to cross the street.
That's
They're not out there doing traffic control. They're not regulating the intersection. They're stopping traffic, cross the children safely, and then they basically step back on the curb. And that's kind of the training that they receive. That's been their mission.
Is there any thought to increasing that training? I'm just thinking in terms of, look, when we call up and when I talk to Captain Fong and we're talking about police details, which we need more of in Charlestown and we need in East Boston, what I'm told is that the details are just not being filled by BPD because of lack of, man or woman power to fill them. So then they go to the stadies and then they'll go to the sheriff's office. So it's just not being filled, not for a lack of work, but for lack of folks filling those spots. So I'm just trying to figure out how to fill those spots.
No, we understand. But please take our recommendations when we say that the crossing guards, they're good at their forte. We just like to leave them in their space there.
So in terms of filling those additional spots, then, how are we gonna get there?
We need more personnel. That's it. Trained Boston police personnel that can actually deal with the traffic, and or Boston police cadets.
Okay.
So we're talking about training cadets as well. Not for the major intersections, that's just kind of dangerous for them. And the more personnel that we get, hopefully one day we can have a whole traffic division. But the calls to service come first, the 911 calls.
Of course, yeah. So, no, I mean, that's where we'd
but
prefer
we are,
to prioritize.
just like you, we're trying to find solutions and antidotes for the problems that we have now that we're facing.
Back to some of the questions that Councilor Zickman had brought up about surveillance and face recognition. And I think you had mentioned that you would come back to us if there was an additional surveillance technology, and you have that commitment still.
We agreed to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the facial recognition to actually have.
Or just any additional surveillance of Boston folks, that if there's a new material, new kind of camera, new infrared, whatever it is, that you would come back to discuss that before it's implemented?
Yes, I will personally give you a call, and we can have that discussion.
Or all of us.
Yeah, all of us.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think that was a really wonderful commitment before, and I'm glad that you're sticking to it. In terms of the community outreach, I complimented again. There's, in East Boston especially, there's been a huge, I think, turnaround and participation in folks in the peace walks, and I can mention Sandra and other folks who've been helping to really continue that tradition. But I think what's so key also is trust building and the bridges. And so I'm sure Councilor Zakerman had talked about BRIC and the work with ICE. And you had mentioned in the hearing when we specifically were honing in on that in the Trust Act, that you would reach out, or the BPD would reach out to some of those nonprofits who are serving undocumented immigrants or immigrants in general.
So there's two ladies I'm working with. They're from the
Brazilian women's
population.
Group? Yeah.
Looking forward to meeting with them.
Okay.
I just saw them at an event, and we are scheduling a meeting. So we keep in contact.
Yeah, that's
wonderful.
wonderful.
I'll talk to anyone, because we need to educate them about what we're doing and not what they read about in the papers as pertain to us and what we're actually doing out there in our partnership with the community. So
I think also
we look forward to everyone coming in,
Yeah.
working with us, because we don't want any victims out there, the people we serve. This is our Boston, so we don't want any negative perception that will cause anyone to not call 911 and get the help that they need. So
Right.
you're on point. We need to work with these groups to make sure they know that we're here to work with them to serve and protect.
I think one of the areas, especially where they'd love to see some increased, or at least some more conversations around U visas and certifying them for those who do come forward. I think that was one of the topics you were going to expand and talk about with them specifically.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. I'll wait till they come back.
Counselor Campbell.
Thank you. Just a couple more things. Wanted to echo the comments from Councilor Janey earlier on unsolved murders, and curious, I had to step out for a call, what else we're doing with respect to some of the disparities in the solving of some of these murders. I mean, obviously, we were at the Peace Walk on Sunday, and that tends to come up in some of those spaces. Are along the lines of just folks who have had lost loved ones, but particularly in communities of color, who have this sense that those crimes are not being addressed or solved as fast as when the victim is white. Clearly, it was a report that came out maybe last year now. Commissioner, you were just coming on, and I was saying, look forward to working with you. So curious what your department is doing and how this body could support you guys in that work.
So, you know, I've been in the Bureau of Field Services side and the Bureau of Investigative Services side. I was a sergeant detective in Dorchester, Bowdoin, Geneva, Topliff, and never left the community. The cold hard facts are that if we have the evidence to go forward, then present that to the district attorney, that's when you can have a case that you can prosecute. This is not TV. It's not CSI. If we don't have the evidence, we can't go forward. So with that being said, one of the things that we have to do is build a relationship with the community so they can trust us, so that when they come forward with evidence, you know, they won't be exposed, and they're not going to be under a sense that they're going to be threatened or harmed. So this is about relationship building. I don't care what the Washington Post said. They're in Washington. They have no clue. And they misrepresented what we told them. Quite frankly, no matter what color, gender, or whatever, if you provide us with the evidence and the witnesses, the case gets solved faster. And we know, as a point of fact, that because of the relationships in the past with the BPD, neighborhoods of color, we've had to work with issues involving trust. So that's the key right there. It's not, oh, you're solving this case faster than this. It's about the evidence we receive. And if people don't trust you, the evidence won't be forthcoming. And I can honestly say in some of our most recent cases, we've been making a lot of arrests because of the cooperation with the community that we serve. So this isn't a pat on the back for BPD, but I can honestly say the city councilors, the mayor, everyone's always pushing the message that this is a problem that we have to address together to end senseless violence and build those systems of trust so people can come forward and help facilitate the investigations. And before I leave, my comments. I
was actually going to comment before. I'll get to Paul. I spend time in the homicide. You know myself, and I can look you in the eye and tell you, it doesn't matter what someone's race is. Right. They're all given the same amount of effort. I mean, I know that article that the commissioner was, alluding to, obviously that was thrown out there, but I got to be honest with you, the people that do that work, they do not see people's color, okay? They see a victim, okay, and they see their families, and I'm telling you right now, the effort they give doesn't change depending on what someone's skin color. I can tell you that with 100% certainty. As far as what we're doing is, we've talked about it before. We're still internally talking about this, ways that we're going to, try to beef up the cold case squad itself. We've also talked to the district attorney. They've had discussions with them about they have a dedicated district attorney to handle those cases. In the past, couple of years back, we were fortunate enough we had a grant that we had we had our own criminalist from the crime lab that would go back in cases and try to they look at old cases, try to find maybe forensic evidence that could go back and retest. they're looking to do that again. So they're coming at it from a couple different angles. I don't know if
No, that's
Paul-
extremely helpful.
Yeah, I don't know if Paul wants to add anything to that.
It's just, you know, the homicide detectives, they follow the evidence they have, and they don't get distracted one way or the other on anything else. When they have the evidence, they go after it hard. And, you know, it's physical evidence and there's witnesses. And those are the keys to the case. And it's developing that trust with the community as far as the witnesses is concerned. And that's probably, you know, where we need to continue to work hard in that area. And then on the forensics end, go back to, you know, establishing, you know, a new forensics facility. I'd suggest that if, you know, we're looking at a new police academy, that a forensic facility should be incorporated right in with that.
Absolutely.
You know, together. You know, our building is 21 years old.
Right.
It was state-of-the-art at that time. 21 years later, it is fastly falling behind, both from the ability to put new equipment in there and the number of personnel that we need to fit in that area. It's just, it's outgrown, you know, it's original.
Bring us into the 21st century, please.
No, this is extremely helpful, and you know, Chief Long, you brought up, you know, the importance of the DA's office in all of this too,
Yes.
which is what we talk about. I remember in my first term having to call John and some others at the DA's office with respect to some folks who did come forward, who were waiting to hear about protective services and all that, because they wanted to be helpful, of course, to BPD and the detectives. But, you know, again, this is not a criticism of you guys. It really is about what we can do on our side to support you. And so whether it's grants for crime labs or positions or other things we can do, adding in the forensic piece to a new building, those are things we can advocate from our side and name. And then the cold case unit expansion, what else we can do, that's helpful to us, and especially when we go out to community to say they're doing the best they can, but let me tell you, there's a lot more that we probably could be doing from our end to resource you guys as well. So this is
Just
helpful.
too, on like the level of police officers, so I'm not sure, you know, I know
Yeah.
this, 24 years ago, I was a sergeant detective in District 11, and I'm not sure what the total number of police officers across the city was at that time, but I know in 1995, there were 21 detectives assigned to District 11 in Dorchester. Today, we have 14 detectives assigned to District 11 in Dorchester. So it's not that we have less detectives across the department, but just that we have a number of different units that have been created for different needs. You know, the human trafficking unit did not exist 21 years ago. The crimes against children unit did not exist. So we just, you know, and those needs are identified, and we've staffed them, but still, you know, that's, you know, we've had to make do with less in other areas of the department because of those other needs. So if we keep in mind, too, that we need to increase our detectives going forward also, not just the uniform personnel.
And one more thing, Madam President.
That's very helpful, thank you.
The funding for witness protection, that has to increase. Because, you know, people read the paper and they hear what's going on. They know it's available in the witness protection. You have to know, if you're going to come forward, you have to be comfortable in knowing that there's funding to make sure you and your family or your family will be protected. So that's important as well, the funding for witness protection.
Great, thanks.
I can come back.
Councilor Edwards?
The breakdown of this year's versus the 20 budget, and then the difference, and then the percentage. And the only reason why is because I saw two line items I wanted to ask about. There was one for the cease that's actually showing an increase in that budget, which I think is great for human trafficking and community outreach. I understand that. And then there seemed to be a decrease, and I'm going to get the acronym wrong, something ESSOP, then BRIC. After that, it showed zeroed out for both of that and zeroed out for JAG. And I cannot find that document right now, but those are, if you...
It's on the back of this.
What is it? Oh, really buying?
Sure, that's the least I could.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That's why I have reserves.
Can I use that? Sorry, it's on the back of, yeah. Well, anyway, here it is. So if you'll look on the packet that says staff expected to testify, I think we got that from you. It's EOPSS brick allocation. It shows in 2019, 322,000 change, and then by 2020, it's zero. So what is that? There's a 100% decrease in, is that a transfer of funds or a transfer of personnel? Do you want me to show you what I'm
You're
looking
looking
at?
it up.
I'm not sure where it is, but, so that's an EOPS allocation to the brick?
Yep,
So there's a
and
line
for
item?
JAG Youth too, both got zeroed out, but, well, JAG Youth had zero before, I'm sorry. So just focusing on the brick allocation, it went from 322,000 to zero for 2020.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
We're gonna have to get back to
We
you.
have that.
That could have been,
We don't have that document, but we'd be more than happy to research and get back with you for those answers. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if that was part of our packet.
Budget, yeah, it says zero.
I'm just, yeah, because usually when you, I didn't know if that's you're moving somebody or if the brick allocation is going,
it's usually when you're moving someone.
right?
But we want
To go to zero. It's one thing to,
We want to have an answer for you, so we'll have to get back
So
to you.
maybe this will help. So it's on page, under external funds, page 201 in the budget book. I'm sorry, not 201, external funds. I'm sorry. What is it?
is, while you're looking that up, is,
We'll
could
find it
you
by dinner time.
explain what EOPSS is?
Yeah.
External, what is that?
That's, yes, that's the state. So there, I'm not sure what the document is, but I can, just from familiarity with the funding streams, nothing was zeroed out. There was, that might reflect a budget period, that might reflect a movement of funds from one line to another. But that funding stream has been consistent for the brick, and on the JAG grant, that went to zero, I believe, because we're still waiting for some processing around that grant.
It's page 195, 196 under external funds. Starts on the front and then goes to 196.
Commissioner, while we're looking that up, can I ask additional questions?
Sure.
There was a recent incident at Boston Latin, and I think it was BPS investigated some sort of cameras in the bathroom.
Yes.
And so it seemed to be investigated by BPS for possibly over a year, and then it was just announced or through an email to some of the parents. So a parent reached out to me specifically to ask about that investigation, and naturally she's very concerned. How was there communication investigating for over a year and the parents weren't told?
That would definitely not be BPD. That
Okay.
is with the,
There was another agency
Right.
that initiated that investigation, and it was a wide-ranging investigation, all over the country, cruise, I believe a cruise ship, I believe outside the country. So they were sifting through, volumes and volumes of video, and then, working on identifying, where the locations were, and then identifying who the individuals were that were in the video. So that took a considerable amount of time. Boston Police weren't involved initially in the investigation, but then when Boston Latin was identified, we became involved in the investigation. And then it still took a period of time before those individuals were able to be identified.
The victims in the videotape?
Yes.
Okay, so the lag was not your knowing and working on it and not telling anybody. The lag was other people have been working on it, and then when it was found that this was a location where the investigation was happening, you were notified right away? BPD was?
No, yeah, so The other law enforcement agency they had, right? They had an investigation. As part of that, they all of a sudden, they seized, they had forensic stuff, computer forensic, right? Which led to volumes and volumes of videotapes that were from everywhere under the sun. At some point, they were going through it, and they got to, I think, whatever video they had. I mean, I can't speak for them. They were going through stuff months and months and months. They finally, whenever they got to it, they thought it could be with Boston Latin, right? Okay, then they had to go through the video to make sure, okay, was this actually Boston Latin? Was this in there? And then it was trying to identify, do these kids, are they students there? So the lag was, it didn't get to us for that period of time because it wasn't our investigation. Like I said, they were in possession of all these videos, and it wasn't until, they must have been going through one at a time, however many hours of that until they finally got to that. And then that's when they notified us.
Is the investigation still going on and you're still identifying folks?
I
know, I'm just curious because I won't go further in my inquiry if it is.
No, I think as far as that, I don't want to speak out of school. I think that's probably, I don't think there's going to be any more there. I mean, as far as other places that he videotaped, that there's still investigations going elsewhere.
This
from all over the place.
Went all over. Yeah. And you do have to go video by video.
Okay.
So on those other issues, so that $320,000 to zero, the appropriation is external funding. And so the budget is zero because that doesn't come from the city.
Okay.
So in the 20 budget, if the state appropriates an equal amount, which we think they will, next year that'll match up as a fiscal year 20 appropriation. But we don't represent that in the budget because it's not.
It's not coming
city
from
money.
yours right now. Okay,
And
thank
the same
you.
thing with the JAG grant. The JAG grant, it's held up, and we're just waiting for word on whether that grant's going to come through. And if it does, when it does, then we'll represent that.
Okay. I'll
You
wait.
set?
No, I'll wait for.
Counselor Campbell.
It's like tennis.
Where's dinner? Just, my last questions have to do with promotional exams. When they happen, I think there was some conversations about trying to have them happen more frequently. How much do they cost, and do we pay all those costs? That kind of thing.
Right now, we're starting the process of the promotional exam. We've actually just went out for an RFP for an exam facilitator to create, design the written component, but also facilitate the assessment component of the promotional exam. We're scheduled to hopefully kick off next week. And we're hoping to have the reading list out June 14th because we have a date secured for the promotional exams for the position of sergeants, lieutenants, and captains for December 14th, and that would be the written component of the exam.
Of this year for all three?
Yes, yes. Once the written exam is completed, then we'll start what they refer to as in-baskets, career reviews, and then the big one is the assessment center, where we have other chiefs of police come in from all areas of the country, and they do assessments for the sergeants, for the lieutenants, and for the captains. And it's a pretty big process because not only, it's one thing just securing a professional company come in to create and design the job description for each of those positions, and then obviously to compile, after meeting with subject matter experts within the BPD, completing service, they'll formulate a test for them to be given. Then the other components that people don't think about that we pay for is securing all the facilities to conduct these assessments. I know that when we did it in 2014, it started in 2014 was the start date of actually the written component. I don't think it was really completed until fiscal year 16 by the time we did the assessments and the scoring. But in the meantime, I think the costs associated with this for everything, which would include facility rental, facilitators, monitors, drapes, so that sound systems, it was roughly $2 million. We've secured the RFP for $1.2 million right now, and they will be responsible for the written exam as well as the assessment center of the exam.
When was the last promotional exam?
2015.
Well, 2014 was the written exam in June of 2014. The assessments were conducted in the fall of 2014, which would be fiscal year 15, and I think the actual announcement of the list came out in early 2016, calendar year 2016, which was part of fiscal year 15.
2 million, that's on us.
So we do the
Okay.
promotional, and then we have a detective's exam. So we try to alternate those. We'll do one, every year. So we'll have a detective's exam, then a promotional exam, then a detective's exam.
Thank you.
As part of doing the promotional exam, if I just made that, in 2014, the Boston Police Department facilitated the exam versus the HRD Civil Service. So as a result, we collected the administration fee that normally the state would collect, $250 per applicant, and that went directly into the general fund to offset the cost. Not much
For
in
the
the
exam.
grand scheme of things, but it still offset the cost of the exam.
What's the detective's exam cost? Is that in the millions too?
1, 2, something.
Yeah, it was like 1.2. Again, we had to secure a test, a company to come in and secure, create and design the test, and by doing that, they have to create a job description, and then from there, they create the test. But we also provide educational materials to the officers for both the promotional exam and the detective's exams, and that, it's expensive as well.
In this budget, are costs covered for the next promotional exam?
So fiscal year 19 included the written component of the exam, which was roughly about $400,000 or $500,000. This year's
okay.
budget has $1.2 million for the completion of the exam, which would be the assessment and the facility rental that would come right after the written component in December.
That's very helpful. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Great. Counselor Edwards.
In recent, I think in Denver was a really good case study for how after they legalized cannabis, and they had, I think, 700 stores selling it, the arrests actually went up for people of color, possession arrests. And so, and everyone assumed, that with the legalization that somehow the arrests would go down or that, be eliminated. But for the, still for some sort of possession or maybe selling, it actually went up. And it was still disproportionate on racial lines. And I don't think we have that here yet. I don't even think we have the data about it. But I'm curious if you've seen any uptick in arrests. Do you see any other movement in general with cannabis? Are you finding people are, because we're having such a slow rollout, for example, of selling in Boston, do you see that there's an illicit underground economy growing? I don't know what you're seeing.
Oh, I know personally, everywhere you go, it's the smell of burnt rubber, but the people voted for it, so it is what it is. And if we make an arrest, it's because of the crime, not because of the color.
Yep, but I'm just
I
curious.
know in the past there's been arrests based on armed home invasions where people set up their own personal shops.
Yeah.
And as a result have been robbed, and we're called to deal with that armed home invasion. But I will leave this open to the panel here.
To your question, I don't think we've seen an increase in
Haven't
arrests
really
at the
seen
moment. I
anything.
haven't seen it.
Period,
No.
in the industry with that. Okay. It might be worth tracking and seeing. Again, I actually, I'm just curious that I think one of the biggest arguments for a lot of people and why they voted to legalize it was because of the fact that the war on drugs, and they felt a lot of different issues and racial bias in enforcement of this particular drug. And so I'm genuinely curious, just as wondering if honestly, if it actually is doing that. If it did just the opposite in Denver, I would, the argument for a lot of people is, well, then what was the point in legalizing it if that's the thing? So maybe we'll check in a couple years from now on a regular
Sure.
basis about the arrest records for cannabis in terms of selling it. That selling it is still illegal, right? Selling it
Absolutely.
if you don't have a.
Distribution is illegal.
So, all right, well, I guess we'll
Without a
check in.
license.
Without a license?
Yes.
Yeah. And then I know that Councilor Campbell had already gone through a great deal of the training and recruitment and diversity, and the recent article may have come up about
Don't
the.
believe everything you read in the papers, trust me. Half the things weren't even mentioned about our advancement, but go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that. I think what I wanted to go down then is, so what are the goals in terms of diversity, in terms of the numbers, in terms of what you want to see for the Boston Police Department? What are the goals?
What are the goals? I didn't hear you.
From the Boston Police Department.
What are the goals?
Goals, diversity. And I'll explain where this question came from. I had asked the same question to Boston Fire, like where we see that we're not matching in terms of parity and gender and so on and so forth. What's the goal? Is it, and then also along with what's the overall goal, what's the plan to get there?
So here it is. What I stated to the paper was, when I was asked, what's the goal?
We can get off the paper.
No,
You can talk to me.
No, I'm talking to you. Okay. And I want to be clear, because everyone read it. Should have read the comments. They were in our favor. But anyway, I digress. I state that open right now, for the record, that we're inviting everybody from every neighborhood, whether you're LGBTQ, if you don't identify by gender. I asked if anyone has addressed that yet. What if someone doesn't want to identify by gender or race? Is that addressed yet? So factoring that in, my answer is the BPD has to be welcome to anyone, no matter how they identify themselves. And that's what we should focus on, is that this department is open to anyone that wants to become a police officer or part of our sworn and civilian family. So that's how I answer that, and it's true. If more females want to apply, or anyone wants to apply that thought it wasn't available for them to do so in the past, we're telling you here and now, come on board. We need more people. We need more representation from the citizens that we serve, so everybody's welcome. But no one wants to talk about, what if you're biracial and you don't want to be identified as black or white? What if you don't want to be identified as a gender? So with that, Boston Police has to put out an open invitation for everyone. If the percentages increase, that's great, sorry, but we're welcoming everybody in to apply. And sure, you can talk about cadets.
So the cadets are a big way that helps us to diversify, and we're looking at gender in the cadets. We're about, in the department, we're about between 14 and 17% female. The cadets, currently 34% female. We're working on a new class of cadets, another 20 cadets. We think we can get up to 50% on the cadets, so that's a tool, that's what we're using, and a lot of times we lose cadets, female cadets, going into the academy because of some of the physical requirements. We've seen that pattern, so we're taking steps to mitigate that by training while they're cadets, preparing them for the rigors of the academy and the screening process. So we hope to, on the cadet side, to get up close to 50% male-female ratio.
Yeah, I think that's really what I wanted to hear. So the goal is cadets to get to 50% in terms of gender. In terms of, did you want the cadets to also reflect the diversity of the city in terms of percentage? Definitely. So was that 54%?
Yes.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
So then,
cadets, anyone that wants to come board, you're welcome.
Yeah, but I think
that's why we have a recruiting officer, and we're going forward with our...
Commissioner, I think the goal I'm trying to get is some hard numbers. So if the goal is 50%, or the goal is such and such percent, then what's your planned percentage per year to get there? So we just heard you're at 34 for the cadets. Right. You want to get to 50.
Absolutely.
Do you see that by next year? Do you see that by 2 years from now? That's kind of the discourse I'm trying to have.
Okay. So we hope to. That's as much as it's based on human beings. What if we don't have that interest? Of course, we want as many as we can get to come board the Boston Police Department based on gender, whatever, as many as we can. But what if people don't choose to do that, and then I'm locked into an answer, and then you come back and say, hey, you didn't meet your goal. What happened? So we hope to.
I don't say it in that tone, first of all. I don't think I sound like that. But I do think, and the reason why I'm just being literally almost the same kind of questioning I did for the Boston Fire is because knowing a goal and knowing where you want to go is extremely helpful, not just for you, but for us as well. So I have 2 young women, Latinas in East Boston High School, who came up to me and like, I want to be a police officer. And I was like, awesome. And then I did nothing with that. Sorry about that, Nora. I'll get them over to you. But it's that kind of pipeline and pushing and moving to something that I think I'll tell you, private companies do it aggressively. They're telling me, look, we need people in this casino. We need people over here. If you know somebody, grab them, move them. And we have these goals. We want this many numbers. I'm hearing that aggressively from other entities. So just knowing what your goals are, knowing where you're going, sometimes is very helpful, just in terms of the team that I consider myself part of the team to helping BPD meet those goals. So again, I think it wasn't just to lock you into something, it's to see like, this is a wonderful thing. I didn't necessarily get those goals from other departments. And so when I don't see those or hear those goals, I wonder if it's a priority for them. When I see something like 50%, I think that's great. It's a goal. No, it's not an absolute. You're right. There's so many factors that impact that. But I want to thank you for that goal. Sure. And I want to see how, part of that and pushing it and getting to that goal, that plan. So to me, that shows prioritization.
And part of the goal is the Bureau of Community Engagement. I don't know if you were here when I was mentioning the Women in Blue, the volunteers, and how we are addressing the female population of the city. And how we're bringing them along and mentoring through Superintendent Bastion and Women in Blue and all of our programs and initiatives. So we're definitely pushing the message that way as well, that you're welcome. And
have you had a chance to go, or are you partnering with BAM by any chance?
By whom?
Becoming a Man.
Absolutely.
Oh, great.
Last week, I sat through the BAM Circle, and the Bureau
wonderful.
did. It's amazing, and we're going to be partnering with the other schools. That's amazing. Girls Leap Leadership.
Yeah, I'll be going.
All those, so all the organizations that are already established, we're just partnering with them. There's so many great organizations out there.
Yeah, because I think it's a pipeline builder.
Absolutely.
With everyone. So even, My Brother's Keeper, Teen Empowerment.
Right.
There's many different organizations and that we're associated with and that we've been associated with.
And just final on the age requirement, if you were to expand what's the retirement age right now again?
65.
And that's forced, there's no choice, you have to leave?
You have to leave.
And so are you looking for more flexible?
More flexible, I'd like to see 67.
How would that help with numbers?
I believe that you'd have many that are going to potentially be able to retire next year. We could have our numbers stay the same and not decrease.
If they just got the
that's
2 more years.
important.
Yeah.
We can talk about recruiting all day, but across the nation, less and less people are signing up to become police officers. So the longer I can keep someone in service to serve the community, the better. And before, you'd have to compete with anywhere from 6,000 to 20,000. Now, if we get, 2,500 people or less to sign up for the exam, that's across the nation. So it's a tough. It's just a tough occupation. You're constantly hearing no. People are constantly hypercritical, and especially with the youth of today, they factor in the service from beginning to end, and it's just not worth it for a lot of people. So, again, that's why everyone's welcome. Come on, we need you.
Thank you.
Well said. Great. I would just be remiss before we adjourn to not thank you, Commissioner, your predecessor. This is my last BPD budget hearing, and enjoyed a great relationship.
Do you have a twin?
I'm sorry?
Hopefully you have a twin.
No, unfortunately. But, I've enjoyed a great relationship with every captain that's served, every CSO that's served, every uniformed and civilian. I just want to give a shout out to, Captain Paul Russell, his leadership, the CSOs, Sean Burns, Stevie Bourne, Christine Marini, Bobby Butler, and the newest addition is Eddie DeJesus, who's back again, which we're really thrilled about. And I want to give a special shout out to Frank Hughes. He does some, and he's a civilian. However, he does such great work engaging all the kids in our neighborhood and making connections with all the youth sports and family. He's just an amazing man, and I just want to, as I go out, just want to recognize all of those efforts over the years in my relationship, and I appreciate it.
And if I may, for the record as well, Counselor, congratulations on a successful career.
Oh, thanks.
We really appreciate your support of the men and women of the Boston Police, both sworn and civilian. You know, I'd like to thank my command staff for being here today.
Thank you.
And Ms. O'Brien as well. Again, we're doing more with less, and I want to publicly thank the men and women of the Boston Police Department and our civilian side as well for doing a great job. Of course, we still have work to do.
Of course.
But as counselors like you, Counselor Edwards, that your support goes a long way in these times of anti-police sentiment, that we can do nothing right. As you saw today, the numbers reflect that. In the past years, the crime rate's down, the arrest rate is down, and the relationships that we're building with the community are a result of us building those partnerships of trust, and it's affecting the crime rate and the arrest rate.
Right.
So,
And
thank
again,
you for your support.
Thank you always.
Rough out there, but we're not going anywhere.
And that's great to hear. So thank you again, and this hearing regarding BPD FY20 budget is adjourned.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Did you? Okay, I'm sorry. We're gonna, and you know what? While we're offline, I got to do those. So Steve Dudley, Jeremy Smith, Brendan Kearney.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Steve Dudley from Weld Hill Street, Jamaica Plain. I wasn't quite sure this is the setting for me to address this issue.
It's about, thanks. It's about illegal parking on Hyde Park Ave at 38 Hyde Park Ave in Jamaica Plain, a couple blocks from the subway station. It's been a continuing problem for the residents there, and 100 of my neighbors have signed a petition to put in a bump out at that location to prevent illegal parking up to the corner of Weld Hill Street. I have some photos that I sent to the councilors this morning by email. We've called 911 and 311 often about the illegal cars parked on that corner. When you drive down Hyde Park Ave, either by bicycle or car, you can't see around the corner, around the curb. Also, on Hyde Park Ave, on both sides, cars park on one side illegal, and the other side it's legal, but the sign came down a few years ago when they put a new building in. I wrote to 311 in October, told them about the problem. They wrote me back. They said they don't see the issue. So I've been working with Matt O'Malley's office with his assistant, Will Webster, about having something called a parklet put in that space to block permanently illegal parking on Hyde Park Ave. It's taken a while. He's not sure when that'll be going in. My neighbors, 100 of them, have signed a petition to put in a bump out, some sort of permanent barrier to put in that space to prevent the illegal parking. I'm not sure if this is the venue for me to bring this up,
Well,
but
actually, you know what? This is more of a public works and BTD issue, to be quite
you're
honest.
right.
If you're working with Council O'Malley, I would just suggest that you continue to work with him
Okay.
at this point. I think that's your best avenue.
Okay, thanks.
Great, thanks. Hi.
Hi, thank you for staying later to hear from us. I'm, going to be another fly in the ointment in relation. Everyone has brought up traffic enforcement throughout the city, testifying about traffic around Forest Hills and the giant increase in construction. We've had so many more residences going up, it's only going to get worse. And with motorists going through there, ignoring crosswalks and pedestrians, and a regressive signal policy that I know BTD has put in, and I would encourage those who have influence to advocate for a more progressive signal policy so that pedestrians are not crossing crosswalks. At the same time, people have lights to turn into those crosswalks. But just want to raise my voice of the need for more enforcement, and specifically for a budget issue. Therefore, we need more allocations for officers on the force to be able to meet the needs across Boston to do those things, and specifically for a data analyst so that we can look at where are the traffic issues, where are we being unsafe. We want to have Vision Zero. How can we do that equitably and fairly? And looking at data is the best way to do that. So I just wanted to raise my voice and say, yes, I would love to see those things included in the BPD budget priorities. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brennan Carney. I'm the Communications Director for Walk Boston. Thank you for holding these hearings. I'm here speaking on behalf of the Massachusetts Vision Zero Coalition, which includes Walk Boston, Livable Streets, and the Boston Cyclists Union, and many others. We're glad that many of the councilors have already talked about it, and we strongly support the inclusion of the data analyst in the budget resubmittal in order to help prioritize not only the police resources, but also BTD and Public Works, both their staff and their capital budgets. That data analyst position is very important. Thank you to all the city councilors who have mentioned the danger of aggressive driving behavior and how it impacts the safety and comfort of people walking all over the city. There were over 4,300 injuries in 2018 in traffic crashes, which I'm sure BPD is very well aware of because you guys are the ones responding to them. This is an issue across the U.S. It's not just here in Boston and in Massachusetts. So, you know, the more we can do to give you guys the resources, and the better. So thank you so much for your work.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Seeing and hearing no voices. Now this hearing is adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry about that, gentlemen. Managed by the Boston Police Department. Docket 0641, message and order authorizing a limit for the Boston Police Department revolving fund for fiscal year 2020 to pay salaries and benefits of employees, to purchase supplies and equipment necessary to operate the Police Department Fitness Center. Revenue for this fund is derived from monthly membership fees. Receipts and resulting expenditures from this fund shall not exceed $100,000. Docket 0642, message and order authorizing a limit for the Boston Police Department revolving fund for fiscal year 20 to support the K-9 unit's training program for officers and police dogs from non-City of Boston law enforcement agencies. The Special Operating Division will charge tuition and other fees to outside law enforcement agencies for the K-9 unit. The tuition and other fees by outside agencies will be used to purchase training equipment, certify instructors, update facilities, and provide funds for other training needs otherwise not budgeted. The Special Operations Division will be the only unit authorized to expend from the fund, and such expenditures shall be capped at $75,000. Docket 0643, message and order authorizing a limit for the Boston Police Department revolving fund for fiscal year 2020 to support training programs for officers from non-City of Boston law enforcement agencies. The Academy will charge participating outside law enforcement agencies tuition for each recruit, police officers, or special police officer they send to the Academy. The tuition paid by the outside agencies will be used to purchase training equipment, certify instructors, update facilities, and to provide for funds, training needs not otherwise budgeted. The Police Academy will be the only unit authorized to expend from the fund, and such expenditures shall be capped at $50,000. I'd like to remind folks this is a public hearing being broadcast and taped on Comcast Channel 8, RCN 82, Verizon 1964, and streamed at boston.gov/city-council-TV. We will take public testimony, however, there's no one here, so I will now just recognize Lisa from BPD. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. The first revolving fund is the Fitness Center Revolving Fund. We have an authorization for $100,000, and basically this fund, receipts from this fund is from membership dues that come in from the main gym that we currently have in headquarters. However, this fund also includes 5 other smaller gyms located throughout various districts within the Boston Police Department. Funding or receipts from this fund offset the salaries of the personnel that run the gyms, mainly the headquarters and the other ones in, I believe, the 5 districts that we currently have. And other expenses may include just like small supplies to keep the gym clean, like washing the equipment down and cloths, but also another expense that not very large, but it's also the maintenance that we pay for, the maintenance service agreements on the various equipment, because it is meticulously run, and and total expenses through fiscal year 19 is $76,600 with receipts of $55,335. The next fund is the K-9 revolving fund, which we have an authorization of $75,000. This again is strictly for special operations, but specific to the K-9 unit. Expenditures that we see in this revolving fund are any training equipment for the dogs or the officers, any supplies that they need to train, and any facilities or facility updates that they use to train the dogs. Revenue from this fund comes in from various municipalities where we train dogs. Fees for training of a dog is $1,400. A bomb ordnance training is $1,000, and team training is anywhere between $500 and $2,000, depending on the amount of teams that you currently have. Total receipts for fiscal year to date is $55,800. Total expenditures is $10,682 for this fund. The last fund is the Academy Revolving Fund. We are authorized for this fund for $50,000. Receipts from that come into this fund are from other municipalities. It was $1,400 in 2014, $2,400 in 2014, with it raised in 2017, I believe, to $2,700. Unfortunately, we haven't had many outside municipalities come in to use the facilities in the last couple of years because we have such larger classes now within the BPD that there's no wiggle room. Right. So unfortunately, we've seen some of the receipts obviously go down or depleted, where some of the expenses we're managing very carefully. Expenditures under this fund come strictly under the academy, and that would be any kind of equipment needed for training the recruits, any facility updates or enhancements. So through fiscal year 2019, we have 0 in receipts with expenditures of $33,409.
Great. My only question is, what kind of internal controls do you have to just make sure that there's a check and balance on the receipts and the expenditure?
Yeah, everything.
Good enough for me, Lisa.
As Captain Crossan said to me one time, I am the ice queen, and I actually got the book in the mail anonymously.
Well, you're doing a great job, John. Thank you. This hearing is adjourned.